We are back from closed session. Roll call, please.
Councilmember Nierenheim. Councilmember Lowenstein. Councilmember Horvath.
Here.
Councilmember Obaji.
Here.
Councilmember MD.
Here.
Mayor Brand. Oh, I see. Okay, so Councilmember Nierenheim.
Here.
Councilmember Lowenstein.
Here.
And Mayor Brand.
Okay, here. So we're all here. Great. Do we have any announcements from closed session, Mike?
No, Mayor.
Okay, great. With that, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Okay, motion by Councilmember Horvath, second by Councilmember Lowenstein. Any objections? Okay, we're adjourned from closed session. Now I'd like to call to order a regular meeting of the City Council of Redondo Beach. Roll call, please.
Councilmember Nierenheim.
Here.
Councilmember Lowenstein.
Here.
Councilmember Horvath.
Here.
Councilmember Obaji.
Here.
Councilmember MD.
Here.
Mayor Brand.
Here, let's all rise and salute the flag and take a moment of silence in memory of our firefighter we lost in Rancho Palos Verdes. Okay, ready? Begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, thank you.
Mr. Mayor, you asked about abstentions in closed session.
Excuse me?
Did you ask about abstentions in closed session, or did I mishear that?
I didn't know that there was any action taken.
Oh,
The city manager said there was no action taken.
got it. Okay, cool.
Okay. Yeah. So with that, I'll go to announcements. Councilmember Nierenheim.
Yeah, I got a couple things. I have my online community meeting tomorrow night at 6:30. And I moved it because we had the residential design guidelines update last night at 6:30, and I watched it, and I want to say to Brandy, you and your team did a great job, and as well as the consultant that you had, great job explaining it. Loved that PowerPoint that you had, and remind everyone that there's a survey link, and it's on my Facebook page. You can go to that. And I'll be emailing it out as well to help update the residential design for single family homes, R1A homes, all around Redondo Beach. And every little community has its own little community character. So it's something that I've really been pushing for many years. And I find it's really important to help keep that little bit of a character of a community that we can have, that state allows us to have, left intact as much as we can. And I want to thank Mr. Wazanski, our city manager, for showing up on Saturday. We had a little bit smaller group than we normally do because it was outside in the parking lot versus inside. You usually get about 30 or 40 people on the inside, but only get about 12 or so people on the outside. So Mr. Wazanski, thank you very much for taking that time. I owe you a few things actually from there. And I want to thank Renee, our assistant, for getting some tables and chairs out. It's the first time we had that. So that was a huge help. People really appreciated that. And, there's a lot of stuff happening in the city. And one thing I want to bring up that's happened in the city, it's not city government related, but I meant to bring this up last week. And it's really sad. It's kind of a sign of the times right now. But our own Raging Cajun was a victim of a dine and dash. But that's not really the tragedy. That kind of stuff happens. Money is money, food is food. But the concerning, sad, tragic part of what happened was when the manager went outside, the assailant had literally drove into the manager and kicked him onto a few feet from PCH. So, luckily he got away with only a few minor scrapes and bruises. There's a video online. There's some pictures online. Really asking the community to spread that message out there, those pictures and photos, and far and wide. They probably aren't from this community. So if they are from within the community, I by this point in time, I think we would have found them, but they're probably outside of our community. So I want to make sure other people in other cities know what's going on, because we just can't, Dying Dash is one thing, but when you start running over people, that just brings it a whole other level. So, other than that, I see a few Christmas trees out there right now still. So a lot of Christmas trees, actually put it next to your green trash can, put it on the curb. You just put some random place. I know in the lower avenues, there's some large apartment buildings. Put it next to the large trash bin, just not some random place on the curb. I'm seeing a lot of these random trees placed on curbs. You got to be next to the trash can where the trash cans are normally picked up. So please go ahead and do that. Other than that, that's it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councilmember Lowenstein.
Thank you, Mayor Brand. The next District 2 community meeting will be a week from tomorrow night, Wednesday, January 19th on Zoom. Originally, we didn't have a topic, but the mayor has graciously agreed to attend our meeting and speak about the housing bills and the statewide initiative to keep local control. So that'll be 6 to 7:30 on Zoom, Wednesday, January 19th. If you need to register, you can find a link on my page on the city website, or I can also email you the link if you email me. And that's it. Thank you very much.
Okay, Councilmember Horvath.
Yeah, District 3 community meeting will be the night after Councilmember Lowenstein's on Thursday, January 20th, 6 to 7:30 p.m. on Zoom. And links are already out there on social media, and my e-blast will go out soon with that information again. But we are talking once again with Friendship Foundation about their project that's going to be breaking ground later this spring at the old Franklin school site. So this is the first of many public outreach meetings for them. That's it.
Okay, great. Councilmember Obaji.
Thank you, Mayor. Heartfelt condolences to the family of Jonathan Flagler, LA County firefighter, as the mayor mentioned, as well as, I think just today or yesterday, police officer Fernando Uriel Arroyos from LAPD was killed while off duty. So the county is mourning those two, and our hearts go out to them, even though they did not serve particularly in Redondo Beach. Our community meeting for District 4 is going to be on Monday, the 20th, and 24th, and the link should be on my city council member webpage. 6:30 p.m. start time, and our guest will be the great city manager, Mike Wazanski. That's it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councilmember MD.
Thank you, Nils, for mentioning the Christmas tree recycling. Just a reminder, you have 2 or 3 more chances to recycle a Christmas tree until January 28th, depending on when your trash schedule is picked up. Slack Key Festival it's up here on my page. It starts at 2 p.m. on Sunday. Order your tickets ahead of time. It's the largest music festival, Hawaiian music, on the mainland. This is their 15th year in Redondo, and it'd be great if we had a big showing for them, especially after they had to cancel for COVID. You will have to show your vaccination card and be masked, so just so you know that. Martin Luther King is going to be on Monday at 3 p.m. at the Redondo Union High School Auditorium. And don't forget the Shred event, I believe, is on January 29th from 8 a.m. to 2 p.m. for any document shredding at the Redondo Beach Performing Arts Center as well for everybody. It's from 8 to noon, but make sure you get there early, because as soon as the truck gets full, they tend to just take off. And also, I meant to call you, Ted Simon, about my mother prides herself on being like one of the top really clean people in the world, that no one can clean better than she can, kind of a person. And she came home to say that she was watching the public works guy clean Del Page Park today, and she said their grandmother must have taught them how to do it correctly, because she was thoroughly impressed at how well they cleaned the park. So I just wanted to give a shout out to them on that one, because they actually impressed my mother. That's amazing. So anyway, that was it. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Thanks for the reminder of Martin Luther King. It's a great event. hopefully everybody can show up to that. First, I want to mention Dr. Marianne Galshill. She's the Director of Emergency Services for LA County. I'm going to do a Facebook Live with her this Thursday at 4:30. So tune in for that. She was so gracious with her time a year ago when we were in the throes of it, and the year before that. So she puts it in perspective for us locally. You know, we've all got a ton of numbers and thinking about everything. And she's just really, really a solid, great presenter and got all the facts. I mean, she is the Director of Emergency Services for LA County. So don't, you don't want to miss that if you've got an interest in hearing what's going on. Let me double check the time. I don't want to give anybody the wrong time, but yeah, that's should be 4:30. Well, let me triple check that, you guys. I'll get back to you later in the meeting. I've got to triple check that. I think it might be 5. I should know. And in closing, too, I just want to give remembrance again to John Flagler, the firefighter up in Rancho Palos Verdes. You know, firemen just, we forget that they're in life-threatening situations at the spur of the moment. And here it was, just a house fire, say just a house fire, but it was a fire. And they've got called to the scene. And unfortunately, he got overcome with smoke and he passed. And it happened that fast. So, next time you see a fireman, you think twice. Those guys may just be responding to a medical call or something routine, but you never know when either them or the police are going to be called to something that turns into a deadly situation. So those guys can be putting their lives on the line in a moment's notice. So never forget that and always thank them when you get an opportunity. And condolences to the Flagler. I since found out he was the son of my high school English teacher. How about that, Mr. Flagler, which everybody loved. So,
It's a small world.
yeah, it sure is. Anyway, with that, sobering moment, we will move on to our regular meeting. Did I lose my agenda here? Give me just a second, you guys. Yeah, so approval of order of agenda. Anybody want to make any changes to our agenda, or do I hear a motion to approve our agenda?
Make a motion to approve the agenda.
Second.
Okay, motion by Councilmember Narenheim, second by Councilmember MD. Are there any objections? So ordered. Blue folder items. We have we have a couple documents for a blue folder item. Eleanor, you want to?
Yes, we have numerous public communications for J1, which is public participation on non-agenda items. You should have also received 2 emails related to that. And then N1 for California Department of Housing and Community Development response to the city's 6th cycle housing element. We have also public communications, and that's it. Thank you, Mayor.
Okay, is there a motion to admit those to the record?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, motion by Councilmember Horvath, second by Councilmember Narenheim. Any objections? So ordered. Next up is our consent calendar. Tonight we only have 7 items consent. We normally approve these all at once. Any member can pull an item for further discussion. Any member of the public can comment on any item. I'll go through the council, see if anybody wants to pull anything. Councilmember Narenheim.
I do not want to pull anything. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Lowenstein.
No, thank you.
Councilmember Horvath.
I don't want to pull anything, but I just want to make sure that the minutes were adjusted. I sent Ellen. Okay, perfect. Nothing.
We got that information.
Okay. Councilmember Obaji.
Nothing. Thank you, Mayor.
And Councilmember MD.
Thank you.
Are there any public comments, Eleanor, on any consent calendar items?
No, we have no e-comments. And let me see. I don't think we have any. Nope, no raised hands for Zoom. No comments.
Okay, with that, entertain a motion to approve the consent calendar.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, motion by Councilmember Horvath, second by Councilmember Lowenstein. I'll do a roll call vote. Councilmember Narenheim.
Aye.
Councilmember Lowenstein.
Aye.
Councilmember Horvath.
Aye.
Councilmember Obaji.
Aye.
And Councilmember MD.
Aye.
Okay,
Mayor.
Eleanor, you gotta read one thing, I think.
Yeah, to a couple. H5, adopt by title only ordinance number 3227-22, an ordinance of the City Council, City of Redondo Beach, California, adding municipal code chapter 36 to title 4 regarding libraries and meeting facilities for second reading and adoption. H7, adopt by 4/5 vote and by title only resolution number CC-2112-124, A resolution of City Council of the City of Redondo Beach, California, authorizing a fiscal year 2021-2022 budget modification to appropriate $121,169 in innovation grant funds for the SBC COG to the intergovernmental grant funds. Thank you, Mayor.
Okay, thank you, Eleanor. And my meeting or Facebook Live with Dr. Gauschel is at 5:30 on Thursday, 5:30. Okay, next item, I guess, is J1, public participation on non-agenda items. This is the opportunity for the public to comment on anything that is not on our agenda. You have 3 minutes. I'll remind you the council really cannot comment on your comments other than very briefly, if at all. So because it's not agendized, but we can agendize things if you bring up something important and later in the meeting, we can make a motion to agendize it so we can have a full discussion. Okay, with that, are there any comments for item J?
Yeah, I have no Zoom comments, none that are, nobody's raised their hand. And then I have, Vicki, would you like to read the comment for the e-comment, please?
Thank you, Eleanor. Yes, submitted by Mark Nelson. City Finance Director Jennifer Paul is a BCHD board-approved committee member. BCHD will have a nearly 500 million commercial development project pending at the City of Redondo in the next month or so. Ms. Paul is conflicted and cannot participate in any analysis, decisions, or briefings regarding BCHD in any manner at the City of Redondo Beach. The city is further disadvantaging surrounding residents by failing to dismiss Chair Bureau from the GPAC, as Mr. Bureau is the primary $300,000 no-bid contract advocate for BCHD at the city, and Mr. Bureau, like Ms. Paul, is a sitting BCHD board-approved committee member. Over 1,200 surrounding residents oppose the 100-plus foot tall, 800,000 square foot Staples Center-sized expansion of BCHD. This is very likely the largest commercial development project in Redondo Beach and is approximately 3 times the height and twice the square feet of the voted rejected Center Cal Mall by the C project. However, the BCHD is completely landlocked by residential 30-foot height neighborhoods. That concludes comments under non-agenda items.
Okay, Mayor, I have someone that raised their hand on the Zoom.
Sure, go ahead.
So Holly Osborne.
Yeah, I collected signatures again for, this is Holly Osborne, District 5, and I collected signatures again this weekend for the local control initiative. And I just want to tell you a very interesting experience I had. So many people don't know what SB9 does. And I showed a picture of what the Golden Hills area looks like with their tall and skinnies. And I said, this could be our neighborhood if we don't sign this initiative and get it passed and get it on the ballot. And somebody said, I don't believe you. This is R1. I didn't buy in this neighborhood for that. I bought in this neighborhood to avoid that. You must be mistaken. He repeated 3 times, you must be mistaken. He's not the only one. And it's just education. Then he said, let me sign. All you have to do is show them the picture of what could happen, and they say, let me sign. And let me tell you, I emphasize the R1 areas because it's the easiest to explain, but there's negative consequences for the other areas too. But please, you've got to keep your people informed. Once they understand, it's let me sign, okay? So I'm getting exhausted by this, and I need you guys to educate your troops. Thank you. I'm done.
Picture's worth 1,000 words. Thank you, Holly.
Okay, that's it, Mayor.
Okay, thank you, Eleanor. With that, we are on to item N1, discussion and possible action on the California Department of Housing and Community Development's response to the city's 6th cycle housing element submittal. Brandy Forbes.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor and Council. Just going to give a brief background and then where we're at and what conversations that we've had with the California Department of Housing and Community Development, or HCD. Last June, the City Council had finalized a land use plan and map and informed to inform the draft housing element and directed staff to finalize and submit the housing element based on those land uses and demonstrate capacity to meet the sixth cycle regional housing needs allocation arena of 2,490 units, which the point of RENA is that we have to demonstrate in the housing element that we have the capacity to build that as well. 1,444 of those have to be affordable units or demonstrate affordability. So staff submitted the draft element to HCD at the beginning of July and received comments from HCD throughout the following couple of months, got an official letter from them on September 2nd of 2021, and that was included in your agenda packet. At the Planning Commission, when they met on September 16th, considered HCD's comments and staff's recommendations for responses. They recommended some additional comments and changes to the draft element and recommended the City Council adopt that. On October 5th, the Council held the public hearing, adopted the Redondo Beach sixth cycle housing element on a 3-2 vote. The adopted housing element was submitted to HCD. They actually received it on October 7th, prior to October 15th statutory deadline for submittal. For HCD, they are now, we're then, once they receive that and doing the evaluation to determine if it complies with the state housing element law. And if you recall during that, those various discussions and presentations, the importance of meeting that October 15th deadline was that we were on that 4-year cycle because we had missed certification deadlines previously. And we were just trying to meet that deadline so that we could get on the 8-year cycle. And in the middle of all of that, Assembly Bill 1398 was adopted and signed by the governor at the end of September. It removed that 4-year cycle issue, so the rules changed. But now they have a requirement that if you don't have a certified housing element adopted within 120 days of that deadline, municipality has to complete their rezoning to effectuate their housing element within a year. So by October 15th of this year, rather than the standard 3-year deadline to submit to rezone of October 15th of 2024. So we received a letter from HCD on October 5th. We'd submitted back in October, on January 5th, we received a letter from HCD stating that additional revisions are necessary. So they took the full 90 days to review our housing element. We just received those comments back, distributed those to the City Council, and here we are to talk about those. So the 120-day deadline after, to have a certified element adopted would be by February 11th. So we still have some room to make that happen, but there are definitely some changes to the housing element that would need to be done, and we'd need to hold a public hearing for amending that. So staff had a virtual meeting with the HCD representative, the one who has reviewed our sixth cycle housing element from the start, to determine what additional actions and revisions are needed to bring the city's housing element into compliance by that February 11th deadline. And again, that February 11th date, if we don't have an element that can be certified adopted by then, we would have to have our zoning update completed by October 15th of 2022. But if we can have an adopted element, hopefully that gets certified and HCD determines that that met the deadline, we would have the 3 years to update the zoning. Mm-hmm. So in order to meet that February 11th deadline and have something that the HCD might consider compliant, at the beginning of our meeting, our call with them, HCD acknowledged that they did not see enough explanation as to why the site, AES site was not being considered. The city did present obstacles for the, as to the AES, there were a number of initiatives over the past 2 decades, that rejected housing on the site, encouraged it becoming a park. A lot of information that HCD did not have about that site. The biggest concern of the site's inventory that was provided was that north end location. Although HCD had previously requested that the city demonstrate that there would be an interest for development of housing on that site in order for them to consider the site, we then reached out to the owners, got that letter of interest, and then HCD kind of changed their perspective. They said that it wouldn't be vacating the site if the owner were to like redevelop and add the housing to that. So they don't expect that it would be built at 100% affordable, which is what we were looking at. There was a little bit of adjustment that we made, so it wasn't necessarily that it would be 100%, but that it was mostly going to be affordable. So what they would accept is something that's maybe a portion of that, maybe approximately 15 to 20% of those units that could be counted towards the affordable housing obligation. Again, we have that 1,444 units that are low to moderate income of the total 2,490. We discussed other sites that the city had considered but hadn't included in the final housing element, such as that parking lot at the South Bay Marketplace, where the living spaces in Nordstrom Rack are located. She confirmed that if the VPNs are just parking lots, that those would have much more viability for their consideration. Certainly, we would need to provide in the language of the housing element that that there need to be a condition that parking would need to remain on the main level, housing could be built above it. But that's something that they would be much more open to that being considered, more of the units or all of the units being counted toward the low income. We confirmed that if we spread the affordable units more across those 3 or 4 sites, adding that South Bay Marketplace, increasing the density south of the transit center, maybe at the 190th Street sites, instead of the majority of the affordable sites being at the north end, that would be acceptable. She said that that's definitely going in the right direction. Overall, HCD wants to see more narrative explaining why the city is proposing these sites and why the sites are suitable. For example, the city is very limited in the number of sites that are over ½ acre in size, and that's one of those triggers for a site being considered for affordability in addition to the density. So that is why we have been looking at the sites that we have. It's not that we have a lot of ½ acre sites throughout the city that would also be available for that residential use. As well, there were comments about the sites that were selected being on the periphery of the city. That was one of the comments that HCD made in our meeting. And we pointed out that, the significance of those sites was because of the transit, the proximity to transit. And that's why those areas were focused, as well as that ½ acre site, size site or larger. The city staff also informed HCD that since the adoption of the housing element, the city has officially supported the project home key application proposed in District 1 on PCH to provide the 20 units of permanent supportive housing. And the HCD rep stated that this would help substantiate meeting the affirmatively furthering fair housing requirement. And so we want to include that in the housing element, and as well, that once those are constructed, taking credit for those in our annual project report. She did clarify that HCD doesn't credit inclusionary housing ordinances or density bonuses. So we can't factor those in for figuring out where affordable housing could be located. The representative did note that ADUs might be increased, but we need to bear in mind that they have to be relatively in line what we've seen or can expect to see develop. So you couldn't just multiply that by 4 and then expect that that's going to be something accepted, just picking an arbitrary multiplier. But we could maybe make some adjustment, but just bear in mind that that's not a significant number of the units. We're talking about maybe 100, 150 of the total affordable units accounted for are from the ADUs. And we use the SCAG methodology that was approved by HCD to determine the affordability, the percentage of the expected ADUs that we can count towards affordable. And that's 64% of the total expected ADUs to be developed over those 8 years can be counted towards affordable. It's uncertain how much we could count SB 9 units. If we count them toward our low income and they aren't built as affordable, we'd be eating into our buffer right away. And it might eventually have to find other sites. So there's still some room to make adjustments to have our housing element, bring it into compliance or what they would find compliance. There's a lot of narrative, I think, that we need to work on. Our staff were getting ready to roll up our sleeves, have already started rolling up our sleeves to start working on this, but wanted to bring this to your attention to get some direction. Our recommendation would be certainly for whatever direction you give us on how to change the housing element would be to bring that back at the February 1st City Council meeting as a public hearing. And then that would give a little wiggle room if we needed to continue the public hearing to February 8th in order for it to be adopted by that February 11th deadline. And that's, we do have maps if we, we want to pull it up and have any conversation about that. The main major sites that we've considered, what we included was that north end, north of the 405. We included a little portion of Kingsdale. We have south of the transit center and the 190th Street sites. Those are the major sites. We had conversations previously, as I had mentioned, about the South Bay Marketplace, where Living Spaces, Nordstrom Rack, Sprouts, utilizing those parking lots. But in the final draft element and the land plan, those were not included at that time. But that's something that would be available for, maybe making some of the adjustments for the affordability.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Is that it, Brandy?
Yes.
Okay, great. Thank you. This has gotten very complicated, folks. I was on a call with our representative HCD yesterday and today, and got more clarification on what they're looking for. And as Brandy summarized quite well, needs more analysis ultimately in terms of how we can conclude that certain areas are going to have affordable housing. I made it quite clear to her that that's, our intent is to get more affordable housing in Redondo Beach, and that's been our charge for quite some time. And pointed out that we got 20% affordable at the 300-unit apartment complex at the Galleria as a condition of approval. And that was just an example of that, along with the permanent supportive housing that we're allowing, as well as the pallet shelters and, the emergency pallet shelters really that we have. So Redondo Beach is far and ahead of any other really South Bay city in addressing this. I shouldn't say any other South Bay city. South Bay is how many cities? We're ahead of certainly of the beach cities and many of the other cities in the South Bay. And we're doing things that we really didn't have to do, right? We did not, there was no mandate to get the pallet shelter program going. There was no mandate to make sure we got 20% affordable. That was just a condition of approval. So I told her we were every bit committed to getting a certified housing element and meeting their needs. She said, things have changed, and she heard Brandy say they changed on the fly. Just last October, we thought we were trying to make sure we got on the 8-year cycle, and here we are. Well, it's all an 8-year cycle now, and there's other changes. So she was sympathetic to that. But there were just key things that have to be further analyzed and better described. And so I don't envy Brandy and her staff. They have a lot of work to do in the next 3 weeks to come up with, something that will be acceptable to them. I would caution everybody that, the staff is, we've had many hearings. Staff has taken a lot of input. They've had a lot of conversations with HCD. They see what our options are, and they're probably best suited at this point to disappear with Veronica Tam, our housing consultant, and come up with something that they think will work for everybody, and particularly HCD. So this is not going to be a simple problem. It's extremely important. Obviously, we want to have a certified housing element. We are still in compliance, correct, Brandy? We do still have a certified housing element. We have not been decertified, and
Correct.
decertification is a long ways off. Firmly believe as long as we continue to work with HCD, whatever the challenges are, that we will get there eventually, if not by February. But they're not even sure if the deadline means February 15th. Is that right, Brandy?
February 11th.
February 11th.
Yeah, they mentioned that their legal department is still evaluating whether it means that we adopted an element by the 11th that then becomes certified, or if we actually would have to have the certification by the 11th. And if it's having the certification by the 11th, I don't know, there'd be so few municipalities that would be in that boat. A lot of cities are just now going through their first housing element adoption process right now, where they're going to planning commissions this month and city council adopting their housing element. So they're not going to have their reviews done. So I think that, we're not the, the lone wolf that they're, tracking down, but rather I think we are ahead of the game. And it's because we were trying to meet the October 15th deadline, and we didn't have that grace period that a lot of other cities did because they were already on the 8th cycle.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and to your point, we are definitely not in this alone. I've been talking to a lot of local elected officials up and down the state, and it's a big challenge. It's a big challenge for everybody. And some cities have way more allocations than we do, although a lot of them have a lot more land than we do. That's one of the problems with Redondo Beach. We don't have a lot of vacant sites, and we're very built out. So it's a big challenge to find a way to be able to upzone in a meaningful way that will achieve affordable housing, not just upzone, but will actually achieve affordable housing. So that's our challenge. So with that, go to Councilmember Obaji.
Right. Thank you, Mayor. I just want to thank staff, Brandy, Director Forbes, and Mr. Scully, because they got on the phone, and Mike was asking for that matter. They got on the phone with us very early on and helped walk us through this, as well as the mayor for spending so much time discussing this with us and getting us phone calls or Zooms with HCD. So it seems like from my discussions with HCD, listening to them, that everywhere that they could make a negative inference against our housing plan, they did so. So when they see the North Tech sector and they see us putting stuff in that South Transit Center lot, they're saying, you're trying to isolate affordable housing and put it all the way on the outskirts of the city. It's like, no, we're trying to put it next to the metro stop. We're trying to put it next to the freeway. That's transit-oriented development. And they are not, clueless about the continued operation of the power plant, let alone the fact that it was just extended for 2 more years and indefinitely opened to continued extension. So there's no chance of affordable housing on that site. And they're clueless as to the history of the property. So I would favor giving this back to staff and asking staff to revise our housing plan, as well as our housing overlay, as well as the explanation and narrative for it, based on trying to actually have affordable housing come into existence with that motivation in mind, that has the smallest carbon footprint on our community and causes the least amount of traffic congestion in the interior of the city. And it obviously stands to reason that affordable housing is not going to go on the coastline. So with that, I would make a motion just to kick it back to staff to work on revising our housing overlay and narrative, and also to the extent we need to move away from the North Tech sector and reduce the density there and diversify where very low income goes in, then to move it to the Kingsdale, and then the 190th is an area. 190th is not an area that took a lot of housing, so we can add some more density down there, and use some of the open space where the huge parking lots are near the Galleria, potentially cite those, since those are potentially likely to come into existence, and they fit the size requirements as well as the dwelling units per acre.
I will second that.
And Councilman, could we ask that you, in your motion, a return and a scheduled public hearing date of February 1st?
Yes, return to February 1st, public hearing February 1st for the revisions to the housing plan. Thanks.
Okay. I'll make a motion in a second. I would encourage staff to exhibit all flexibility they need based on what they know, because
you guys are the experts in this stuff.
What will be acceptable.
Actually, sorry, Mayor, before I yield the floor completely, if I could just add, I think I heard from Veronica Tam in our call with her that only 2 cities in the whole state had their housing plan approved in this round. So it's not like, oh my God, we did a terrible thing here in Redondo Beach. And even Miss Tam was surprised by the letter that we got from HCD, which begs the question, is Ms. Tam a good consultant? So I asked HCD that question. They said, absolutely. We are not telling you don't work with her, because she's one of the best, and she knows the area very well. So it's really, and I asked, well, then why was she surprised by this? And they said, because there's been a ton of changes in the housing law since 2017 to the present time. And I can't even blame our staff for not, I'm sure they're keeping up on it, but it's just a deluge, nonstop bills coming out of Sacramento and being signed by this governor. It's got to stop, but obviously right now we're not stopping it.
Mm-hmm. Well, and she also said as a result, there's a lot of conflicts within state law. Look at affirmatively furthering fair housing versus, wanting to reduce vehicle miles traveled. She said, yes, those are conflicting statutes in the sense that if you wanted to spread it out, well, then now you're going to increase vehicle miles traveled, which goes against other state laws trying to reduce greenhouse gases and maximize ridership in transit. What does drive ridership in transit is commercial by transit stops and affordable housing by transit stop. Those drive transit ridership. So anyway, HCD was very understanding of the conflicts we're facing. So, and as Zane said, we're not alone. Okay, Councilmember MD.
Can I get some clarification on what you said? The first one being that that we needed to rezone by September of what year? Is it 2022 or 2024?
Well, if we don't have an adopted housing element that's certified by February 11th, and that's where they still are trying to figure out if it needs to have the certification by the 11th or adopted by the 11th that's later certified. If you don't meet that deadline, you have to have your zoning completed by October 15th of 2022.
So how would that work? Would we have to call a special election? So that's what I'm really trying to wrap my brain around.
Well, I think before Brandy tries to answer that, we can meet that deadline. There is no possible way for us to meet the October 22 deadline. We have so much environmental work to do before we even bring that to the public for a vote. We're going to be scrambling to meet our March 23 regular city election deadline as it stands today. There is no way they'll be compliant with an October 22 zoning execution.
Okay. And then do you have a map ready just to remind me and everyone that might be watching what lots are those APN numbers that are mentioned in the letter, which is 75100300058, and then 22, basically 11, 12, I'm sorry, 5, 6, 7, 11, 12,
right,
22 and 24 and 25.
Right. Those There was one that was the Pancake House that's down by Legato. I'm not quite certain, that understandable to that point, to their point on that. It's the others were all sites in the 190th Street area. And I think that goes to, more of that narrative of, the use and of those sites currently. Those were all the rest of them were in the 190th Street, those two industrial areas that are included in our housing element to become multifamily housing.
Weren't those rejected already?
No. They had asked that we reach out to the property owners. We did receive some response from some property owners that own multiple lots that they would have that interest. Hadn't heard back. I think those are probably the sites that we hadn't heard back from the specific property owners. But I think a big part of it is that in our conversation with HCD is really putting that narrative of why we think that these sites would be right for that kind of redevelopment.
All right. Could I get a map of that? Or have all of us get a map? I wanted to, you guys before had the maps with the showing what each APN number is.
Sean, do you have that with the 100?
Well, I can pull up the city GIS system and it shows all those lots except the Pancake House one.
Right.
Happy to share that. Okay. Can you see the map here?
Not yet.
Has it come up yet?
Yeah, there we go.
Okay. So the lots that HCD identified, they're all lots in the Marianne Drive that are less than half acre in size. So this lot here, 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 this lot as well.
And I think it was that 510 over on the other.
Right, and then right over on Meyer Lane, these four lots here, 1, 2, 3, 4, are all one of the identified sites or a combination of the sites. And this site here, 510, is less than half acre. So they identified that site as a site we need to provide more information.
Okay, so you clicked them awfully fast. So the 4 on Meyer are which numbers, which low APN number it is? So that's the 522 is the less than half an acre. What were the other 3?
Correct. This is the 020.
Yeah, I didn't even see that as.
No, that's not on there.
Oh, no, that's included. No, then we go over from there to Marianne Drive.
Okay, so Marianne Drive is 005, and what else?
005, 006.
Is also Marianne, okay.
Correct. 007.
Mm-hmm.
012.
Okay.
011.
Okay.
Then we move up to 024.
Which is also on Marianne?
Correct.
Okay.
025.
Is Marianne.
Correct.
So none of them are Meyer Lane?
Only the 5.
Only the 22, okay.
Yes.
Okay, and then the 58 one, the one that's a weird number, 58, that's the Pancake House?
Correct.
Yes.
Okay, thank you very much.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Can I ask about the are you done, Laura?
Yeah, I think for now, yeah. Thank you.
Sean, Brandy, let me ask you, the lot just east of the Pancake is vacant. It was a FedEx, it was a Cleaners. It is sitting vacant. And it looks like 3 acres, I'm going to guess. It is sitting vacant and it is zoned for 30 or 35 units per acre. So are we already taking credit for that or what?
Yeah, I think that's included in our mixed use. We'll double check that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I don't know why the Pancake House is on there. Was it because it was under consideration, but
It might be because it's in that mixed use zone. And so they looked at that, and it's probably, to Sean's point, it's probably again, just because it's a less than 0.5. But I think that the other site that you're mentioning, we'll make sure that we implement that, because that's, definitely going to be viable. So we'll definitely add the narrative to that.
Oh yeah. Yeah. It's just sitting there. I mean, FedEx moved out, everybody moved out. It is sitting vacant, and it's a good sized lot. So I guess my question is, I don't understand why there's focus on the Pancake House, which is right next door, and not that one.
I think it was probably just that it was in that list because it was in the mixed use and at a certain density level, and they were probably just questioning it because of the
because of what?
The size, that it was less than the half acre. That all those other that we were going through on 190th, when they were looking at the individual, they were just calling those out because individually as lots, they're less than half an acre each. But when you look at the whole area, that's all in one location. And so that's those are the things that we just need to demonstrate a little bit more and document. If there's single ownership of multiple lots of those things, we need to just document that, because that is making that more viable. The Pancake House might be that more isolated, but we'll definitely trigger in if it's adjacent to that. No, the FedEx site I think is across street.
Well, there's a Lynn's Crafters, so it goes Pancake House and then Lynn's Crafters. Lynn's Crafters is still there for how long?
So I think our focus is going to be definitely on that, describing and increasing the narrative on the 190th Street sites for that particular comment. And then, and I do think that it would be good to point out that site, Mayor, that you just mentioned.
Mm-hmm. Well, and what I got out of talking to HCD is, she wants us to have conversations with the property owners, not just make, arguments about why it might happen, but, have actual recorded conversations with the property owners and what their intent is. Because, if their intent is to do that, great. If it's not, well, it's important information, because what HCD wants to see is proof that this could actually happen. Not just, we haven't heard any opposition, therefore could. No, they want to, no reason not to reach out to them and have actual conversations and record what happens in those conversations. So. Anyway, I just should remind the public, we're not doing this because we feel like we're not dense enough. Okay, we're doing this because it's required by the state. So we're not sitting up here doing something that, we're very densely populated. We're built out for the most part, but the state is driving this to get more affordable housing, which is upzone. And unfortunately, SB 9 passed with no affordability requirements. Quite a conflict with what they say and what they do. Anyway, Councilmember Nierenheim.
Thank you, Mayor Brand. So let me get this straight, this timeline here. They want us to, what I heard was they want us to adopt it by February 15th and then submit it to them. So if we, as a city council, adopt the this plan, and then they approve it 6 months later, or 3 months later, or a week later, that's what I heard. Not necessarily that we have to go through a vote, because a vote is very different.
Correct.
Public vote.
So what it would be is the city council adopting a housing element that's that meets those the state housing law, that they can certify. The question is, do we have to have the actual certification letter by the 11th, which I don't think any, there's municipalities that meet that. But, what we want to, they're not sure if that's what the legal department at the state is going to determine, or if they're going to say, if your housing element was adopted by February 11th, and then subsequently certified, that version was subsequently certified, that then means that you're in compliance. We're not sure what they're going to decide, but if we don't adopt a housing element, if the city council does not adopt a housing element by February 11th, we know we're not, it's not going to be a certified housing element. So The vote would be when you have to have the rezoning. So does the rezoning have to be this year because you didn't meet that February 11th deadline, or is it 24 because you did meet the deadline? And we'll still be kind of in that limbo, but at least if we get a housing element that we are addressing, what HCD, their concerns, and if we have questions as we're, drafting something, moving along, we'll definitely be reaching out to the representative probably multiple times in the next few weeks. We really want to work towards getting that adopted before that February 11th date.
Yeah, and I would add to that, Councilman, all we can do is our best.
Right.
And our options right now are to conduct a hearing on the 1st and if necessary, continue that hearing to the 8th, adopt revisions to our housing element and get our element submitted by the 11th. And then from there, it's really going to be on HCD to figure out what they view as their legal standard. They too I believe, are hopeful that it's an adoption standard rather than a certification standard, because you can imagine the workload that they just inherited by way of this assembly bill that we heard they were not consulted on during its preparation either. So they're reacting to this well, and they're not really prepared to certify hundreds of housing elements by that date. So we think the facts will ultimately be on our side in that regard. But that's all we can control from now. And if they try to obligate us to an October zoning situation via vote, that's an impossible standard. We simply can't meet it unless they grant us the ability to exempt CEQA during the process. So, we're stuck. So we can focus on the 11th submission and then we'll have to react from there.
For staff wise, I've talked to plenty of other city council members in other cities, and they didn't get theirs submitted until November, October, to some December. They were hoping to get it done by the end of the year. So I'm glad we were done early on this. I'm sure everyone's going to have a tremendous amount of issues. What about the letter that the landowner from Retail Opportunity Investments Group on the corner of Inglewood and Marine and Interstate 405 there, which is a large parcel. We upzoned it quite a bit, a lot of commercial, a lot of residential. And they reached out specifically saying that they've done projects like this and they are interested in doing projects like this. Did that hurt us? Did it help us? How'd that go with the state? Did they look at that letter and say,
It's kind of in between. So
We did both.
right. It helped us because I don't think they would have allowed us to consider that site at all for housing if we couldn't demonstrate, because their point was if, these are viable businesses, they're not going away. There's no way you can, scrape and build. How could you, it's not going to be a vacant site. Well, our point was we're doing an overlay where they can build. They could build while that is, operating and have both uses. Well, then it was like, well, yeah, but how do you know that's really going to happen? And so we actually reached out to the property owner. Interestingly, they have done similar types of development. But the issue then was, well, again, it's still not going to be a vacant site. And so chances are if they're going to bother to go and build this residential, it's going to have market rate in it. So you're not going to be able to count all of that towards the affordable, which is what we were looking to do, because it's not going to be just this vacant site that an affordable housing developer could come in and build. So it helped in the sense that we could count the site, but we're not going to be able to count, all of it towards affordable. And to put it, a small portion, like 20%.
Right. And to put it into basic numeric terms, Brandy, correct, our submittal cited that location as potentially housing 700 affordable units by way of the letter and the reality that they are going to evaluate a more likely project. We're only going to get credit for approximately 20% of that 700 unit count as affordable. So we have to contemplate whether or not that is the best location to site that volume of arena if we can only identify 20% of it as affordable. We may want to reposition that elsewhere in the community as a better fit.
Yeah, I'm just confused by the whole what they're looking for, because at the end of the day, we as a city, we don't build any developments, right? We don't build any residential, we don't build commercial, we build nothing. We can't force city landowners. So for us to zone something and then get a letter saying that, hey, we're wanting to do this, we're willing to do this, and then from them to flat out discount that, well, let's just say that any other lot anywhere else is better. Is more attractive.
Well, actually, that's where they talk, and I know my presentation had a lot of information, but one of the things that when we talked about the South Bay Marketplace area where living spaces, Sprouts,
right,
where all that parking lot is, that's in that vein of vacant lot. I mean, yes, it's parking for those uses. So we'd have to, document that the first level would have to remain as parking, but that housing could be built above. That's something that's more viable in their minds, that an affordable housing developer could come in and build something like that.
Okay.
Yeah, our challenge there, Councilman, is to connect the offsetting loss of parking and
right,
that narrative and how that can be absorbed into a future project if it's to be constructed. So each site presents a slightly different rationale to it based on their feedback.
Right. Similarly, south of the transit center, there's a big portion of that's parking lot, and a big portion of it that's really under or unused site that we know that the new owner doesn't want to keep it in this, and they don't want to keep the structure that's there now for whatever use that they move forward with. So, it's really just, recognizing, and that's going to be a different description and narrative than the South Bay Marketplace. So we have a lot of writing to do.
Okay. I know we looked at the Kingsdale site location. We had a landowner there come by and say what we weren't into, or where we were, or what they wanted. And I know we changed that a bit too. So I wouldn't mind looking at that site too, if we needed to. So I just would comment upon that, because we did do a lot of moving around on that according to what the landowner wanted to do, and viable. Okay, thank you very much.
And if I could, Mayor, one more thing to add, and we'll do our best based on the motion to go back and try to sort this out in a way and create a narrative that will make this viable for certification. But the math isn't really our friend in this regard. We may have to actually identify a RENA count above our mandated amount on the aggregate in order to meet our affordability minimums.
Aren't we already doing that?
Well, we are to a degree. We have a little buffer in the calc by, I think, maybe 300 units, if I remember correctly, Brandy, based on what Veronica said. But our concern is that we're going to do our best to not allow that to grow too much, but it may have to grow for us to ultimately come back with a mandatory minimum affordable count that we think HCD will accept. So just
right.
So this is kind of what's changed from the years past, right? That, they want more assurances that affordable is actually going to happen, which, reduces how much we can assume is going to be affordable, especially if you get a letter from a property owner. So, it makes perfect sense. And if I was HCD, I would, it's kind of like a show me the money equation, well, go talk to these people and let me know what their intent is. Cause, we're not playing make believe here. And you can call them, they have phones, and we can record and discuss, and who knows, you never know what you're going to hear. So to me, that's what I got out of HCD is, there's much more detail in what property owners have planned than there was in the past. And as a result of what Mike was saying, if they come back and they say, yeah, we'll do that, but we're going to build a certain percentage, well, then, now you got to look at other areas, because they just said, like in that north area, what it's going to be in so many words, or maybe in very specific language. So that's, to me, what's really changed. There didn't used to be, as I recall, this kind of detail about each specific property. So Aaron Jones isn't here to confirm that, but
No, it's true. I was told many times by everybody that it was completely a paper exercise. What difference does it make where you put it? It's just a paper exercise.
So that's all changed now. And what's also changed is there are many conflicting state regulations. As they pass bills, they can't even keep track. They're cross purposes with themselves often. And I think a good example is, reducing vehicle miles traveled and affirming what's that?
Affirmatively furthering fair housing.
Thank you. I had
It just
it
rolls
memorized.
off the tongue.
I had it. Anyway.
AFFH.
AFFH. Nobody knows what that means. Okay. I guess we'll take public comment.
Yes. Okay, right now I don't have anybody with their raised hands on Zoom, but we have, here we go. Okay, so our first person is Wayne Craig. There we go.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. This information is again being spread for political theater. The HCD did not outright reject and decertify the plan for Redondo Beach, or because it was unfair to District 5, as has been reported by some. These are just false statements. When you read the actual letters from HCD, they ask for clarification and narrative, and if needed, some revisions. Many in Redondo feel this is just another effort by some officials to help their developer-centric friends build thousands of unaffordable housing at the AES site. The reality is the AES site is the worst location for any housing development. First off, 4 citywide elections have rejected putting housing at the site. The California Water Board has just extended power operation for at least 2 more years, and possibly even more years after that. The land is contaminated and requires years of remediation before it could even be safe or certified for housing. The AES site is naturally a lake. It's wetlands, and it has been for tens of thousands of years. The California Coastal Commission has even mandated that an approximately 6-acre natural salt lake and wetland buffers be restored to the site. And state dictated criteria for new housing is that it must be located with close, easy access to regional mass transit and transportational arteries. That means freeway access and freeway access points on light rail stations. The AES site is nowhere near any such transportation arteries. The last point is the state won't believe increasing the housing overlay in this area would result in any affordable housing built at all or in any of the next cycle. This means it won't be accepted to satisfy the state requirements. It's just a game of smoke and mirrors. To those behind this deceptive campaign, please stop pushing these falsehoods. Let's instead create a realistic and workable plan. Thank you again for your time, Council.
Excellent. Okay. Next person is Jim Light. Okay.
Can you hear me? Okay, thank you very much. This new interpretation where you gotta validate that the property owners will build some percentage just makes the amount of RENA that we got assigned to us even more untenable, and I'm hoping we're pushing back much harder on that. And they talk out both sides of their mouth. They chastise us for locating housing, on the edge of the city where our transit happens to be, but then they're willing to put it over top of parking lots, which to me is not the most desirable location to build homes for anybody. Redondo residents shown that we support housing development. That's evidenced by our current density compared to some of our neighboring cities. We have shown that we support conversion of industrial and commercial sites such as Ruxton Lane, the old Ford dealership and the Galleria Mall to residential uses. And we've even approved by vote the change of school property to residential in the case of the Kensington development. However, the residents have a long track record of opposing residential development and supporting parkland on the AES site. All the way back in 1944, there was a plan put together to turn this Salt Lake into a big recreational area and convert the then current power plant into a community center supporting recreation there. In 2002, when they were looking to put thousands of units on the AES site, we had the Heart of the City referendum. The very next year, we had a referendum against turning that into a redevelopment district to accomplish the same goals. In 2005, despite biased ballot language, the residents voted for a large park over a mixed-use development that had just 350 residential units. In 2010, residents voted to make parks the only permitted use of that property. In 2015, the residents defeated Measure B, which had 650 units on the site and over $1 million campaign to get that done for AES, and we rejected it. And then in 2011, the California Coastal Conservancy did a study on behalf of Redondo that concluded the AES property is the best opportunity and best location to add any meaningful parkland in our city. We're in the South Bay. With 93% of working residents commuting to work out of Redondo, it would be hard to find a more impactful site for high density residential. As Wayne said, there's no transit near the AES site. Commuters would have the longest routes through our entire city to get to work. We're far from any Green Line stops. We're 20 minutes to the 110 or the 405, and we're 30 minutes from a work area like El Segundo. So it makes no sense. It shows that the HCD is being arbitrary and capricious and not doing their homework when they give us feedback like that. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Okay, and at this time we have 3 e-comments. Vicki?
The first comment is submitted by Elisa Beely. Dear Mayor Brandon, council members Nierenheim, Lowenstein, and Obagi. We told you repeatedly that your housing plan was unfair. We voiced concerns about the negative impact your plan would have on our neighborhood, our traffic, our schools, and our safety. We pleaded with you to consider equitable distribution of new housing across the entire city. We asked you respectfully to hear us. You did not listen. Even worse, at times you mocked us. You incorrectly said we didn't understand environmental concerns, density calculations, or progress. You chastised us for being proud of our neighborhood and wanting to preserve it. You removed planning commissioners who appeared to agree with us. For speaking my mind, you accused me of trolling. Where you failed us, thankfully, the state of California heard us. You could have saved a lot of time, effort, and resources if you would have listened to us in the beginning. Will you hear us now, or will we risk the consequences of noncompliance? Please do the right thing for all of Redondo Beach. Work with the entire council to develop a plan that's equitable for our whole city. Thank you, Elisa Beely, District 5. Comment 2 is by Mark Nelson. I continue to be very concerned that BCHD plans to develop commercial $12,500 per month assisted living unaffordable, that per the BCH MDS study is 80% plus for non-residents of the 3 beach cities and 90% plus for non-residents of Redondo Beach. From an objective perspective, BCHD, 100-foot tall, 800,000 square foot campus expansion in direct opposition to 1,200 plus surrounding neighbors, adjacent residential zoning and compatibility. Comment 3 is from Sheila Lamb. Dear Mayor and council members, now that HCD has rejected the RB housing element, it is important that sufficient time is taken to identify appropriate new locations for the RENA housing location. With careful deliberations, housing sites will be found. However, Redondo Beach residents have been clear in the past and continue to be clear in the present that the AES power plant site is off limits for housing development. The AES power plant site, like our national parks, is a gem that must be preserved for our grandchildren and their children. Its restoration as a park and wildlife sanctuary in the middle of an urban is priceless. Redondo Beach must be remembered as a community that recognizes the long-term value of the natural environment over the short-term capitulation to financial investors. Sheila W. Lamb. That concludes comments for this item.
Actually, there's one more, Vicki.
Oh, thank you. I just refreshed. Okay, the next item, submitted by Peter Aziz. Dear Mayor and City Council, you have blatantly disregarded, chastised, ignored, and poorly misrepresented nearly 500 comments of Redondo Beach residents who have asked you to equally spread the housing arena throughout all of Redondo. Yes, you colluded with specific misguided representations and chose to ignore what has been reported as fact by both HCD and SCA QMD about affordability and health concerns of potential future residents. You say this is not an issue about race, yet housing affordability is in fact a racially equitable issue. Generational wealth no longer looks like the single-family exclusionary zoning, unfortunately, because this generation statistically makes less than past generations. Multi-generational housing exists, yet with the current restrictions, council looks to seclude housing restrictions, independent and multi-generational housing cannot exist. If you don't want to consider housing on the AES site, be more proactive about considering lifting and expanding the height limits to provide more available housing units. Please consider expanding your idea of what equitable housing looks like so that you can tell future generations you at least considered their well-being with support for housing shared across all of Redondo.
That concludes our comments, Mayor.
Okay, thank you, Eleanor. Councilmember Obaji.
Sure. Thank you, Mayor. I just want to respond to one of those comments. There are 500, maybe 500 people who voiced a desire to see the housing go on the power plant, Mr. Aziz, but there are over 66,000 residents in Redondo Beach who have consistently not put in comments, but in majority numbers voted to preserve open space there. And what the 500 loud folks who were called to voice their opinion, while the rest of the 66,000 snooze because we weren't rallying them to come voice their opinion here, but they will be here soon enough, is that there's a great opportunity with this AES power plant site when this power plant does go down to enrich our city with open space. And that's wealth, green wealth, that is more valuable than any money in the world could possibly dump on Redondo Beach. So yes, we've heard from 500, but we're going to hear from a lot more, and HCD is going to hear from a lot more who favor more open space in Redondo Beach.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah, it's amazing. It's like the 20th anniversary next month on the Heart of the City project. So, there's been a lot of public votes over 20 years. So we don't take straw polls at council meetings. We saw where that got the city over the last 20 years, just taking straw poll votes. No, we've had elections where everybody has the opportunity to come out and vote. So I think that's pretty clear. Look, HCD is looking for us to be able to meet these new affirmative fair housing requirements, get zoning that we will actually get affordable housing. And that's what our charge is, and that's what we've got to do. So staff's got a big job ahead of them, and we'll put our best foot forward, and we will adopt something. I'm pretty confident, and then it'll be in HCD's lap, and then we'll go from there. So one step at a time. Staff has a lot of work to do in the next few weeks. See what they come up with. We may have comments. We may be able to adopt it next time, and go from there. Or take another meeting, but it'll eventually end up in their lap, and then we'll wait to hear from them, and we'll go from there. So, as I said many times, we are not in this alone. This is going on all over the state, and it's a big challenge, and we're going to do our best to meet it. So there you go. So anyway, I don't see any more hands up or comments. I'll just take a roll call vote. I guess the motion, explain the motion again, please. To send staff back to
staff to revise our housing plan and increase our narrative explanation for why housing was located where it was. Clearly, our affordable housing or very low affordable housing needs to be reduced from the North Tech sector down to, spread a little more down to the Kingsdale area, the Nordstrom Rack, Sprouts parking lot area, and 190th. And otherwise, staff do what they know within their expertise they need to do to try to get this passed in an intelligent fashion that minimizes the carbon footprint of new housing and reduces trips through the middle of the city.
Well, and also to set the hearing for February 1st.
Right.
Okay, I'll do a roll call vote. Councilmember Nairnheim.
Aye.
Councilmember Lowenstein.
Aye.
Councilmember Horvath. Councilmember Horvath. I didn't hear.
No.
Councilmember Obaji.
Yes.
And Councilmember MD.
I'm confused. We're just getting it to come back, right?
Yeah, and we sent staff to figure out the best way to meet the
We didn't give them
letter
any
that was
specifics,
sent to us.
right? We didn't give them any specifics. We're going to let them figure that out.
Pretty much, yeah.
Density
Yeah.
District 5, yes.
We gave them direction to answer the letter in the best way they see fit so that we get a certified housing element. That's my understanding. Is that correct?
All right, then I'll vote yes.
Is that correct, Brandy? I mean, in essence.
Yeah, evaluating the sites that'll meet that, and it's going to be in line with the sites that we've talked about in the past.
Okay. Okay.
Then I'm going to vote no.
Okay, there you go, 3-2. All right, next item is item N2. And N2 is discussion and possible action regarding the city's budget calendar. Jennifer Paul.
Hello there, Mayor and City Council. Thank you so much for the opportunity to discuss our annual calendar. And so in general, it's pretty similar to years past with a couple of exceptions. And I can just, walk through it. The highlight is we are just providing a little bit more transparency and involvement with the community here. So you'll see some additional dates for community workshops for the budget, so as to involve the commission and the community and to inform us and, our city manager prior to the budget rather than presenting the budget after it's completed. So if it's okay, I'll just go ahead and walk right through that.
Sure, go ahead, Jim.
Okay, wonderful. So today is the budget calendar approval, hopefully after I run through all this. Then we have 2 strategic planning sessions on Zoom. I believe they're set for 6 to 9. That's January 25th and 27th. City Manager Mike Wodzansky is running those. Those are also additional to your
Jennifer, you know what? It might be helpful to go ahead and pop the calendar on the screen here through a screen.
Oh,
share.
sorry.
Yeah.
Thank you for Zoom. Thanks, Mike. Okay. Okay, so I can make this a little bit bigger for everybody. There we go. So the first date is tonight. And then, as I mentioned, January 25th and 27th, we have 2 strategic planning sessions from 6 to 9 p.m. And those are Zoom meetings. So I've got here the date, and then the column is the item, and then just the venue. And as far as we know, they're all, virtual meetings. So up through these first 3 items, are there questions, or should I just run through it and then see if there are questions at the end?
Yeah, just kind of go through it, Jennifer. We'll interrupt you if there's a hiccup or somebody's got something to say.
Sounds good. Okay. And then February 8th, we have the strategic plan consideration of approval, and that will be held at a city council meeting. On February 10th, we have the mid-year budget review with the Budget and Finance Commission. And then several days later, we will have the mid-year budget and capital improvement project, the CIP status report to the city council, which will be at a city council meeting. And then shortly thereafter, we will have that same night, we'll have the city treasurer's quarterly update on investments and economic trends. And then in March on the 15th, we will have the strategic plan monthly update at the city council meeting. And then we've bolded these 2 items, as I mentioned at the beginning, the budget workshops. And so that'll be March 29th, which will be a community meeting. And then April 14th, which will be at the Budget and Finance Commission meeting. Then on April 19th at the City Council meeting, we will have a strategic plan monthly update. On April 25th, we will have presentation of the fiscal 2022 to 2023 CIP, the Budget and Finance and Public Works Commissions. So that'll just be some joint commissions meetings. On May 16th, the fiscal year 2022 to 2023 City Manager's proposed budget and CIP delivered to Mayor and City Council, the charter date. On May 17th, fiscal 22 to 23 proposed budget and CIP received and filed by City Council, and that'll be at a City Council meeting. That same night, we will also have the city treasurer's quarterly update on investments and economic trends. On May 26th, we will have the fiscal 22 to 23 CIP review by Planning Commission for consistency with the general plan, and that'll be at a Planning Commission meeting. And then on May 26th, we will have the proposed budget presentation to Budget and Finance Commission, and that'll be at the Budget and Finance Commission meeting. On June 7th, we'll have the fiscal 22 to 23 proposed budget and CIP public hearing at City Council meeting. June 9th, we will have the fiscal 22 to 23 proposed budget review with the Budget and Finance Commission at the Budget and Finance Commission meeting. June 14th, the fiscal 22 to 23 proposed budget and CIP public hearing and CIP review at a City Council meeting. June 21st, the fiscal 22 to 23 proposed budget and CIP public hearing and consideration of adoption at a City Council meeting. That same night, we will have a strategic plan monthly update. And then July 1st, a new fiscal year begins. July 19th, the strategic plan monthly update will be held at the City Council meeting, and those just for consistency. So you'll see they're at the third week of the month. So the second or third City Council meeting of each month.
And I don't think you need to go through the rest of these, Jennifer. I think we just want to lead up to our budget discussion. You don't need to go through the whole year.
Okay.
Unless somebody's got a question about it. I mean, it's just kind of standard stuff.
Yeah, I think Mayor, Jennifer, why don't you go ahead and pull it down? I think the emphasis here tonight is the two additional meetings really on the front side of the preparation of the budget. Historically, most of our input gathering is focused on the delivered city manager budget. After we sort of massaged it, made our recommendations, what we're doing is looking for input before the budget is prepared to give the community an opportunity to tell us what they view as priority. And then we'll have the opportunity for the Budget Finance Commission to share their thoughts on the preparation as well. So a couple of meetings on the front side to help inform the process rather than to simply have it be a deliberative kind of post-submission review. And with that, we would ask that you approve the calendar and guide us on our way going forward.
Is it new, the March 29th and April 14th budget workshops? Are those the two that are new?
Yep, those are the two meetings. We have not had those in previous years.
And those are conducted by?
Will likely be conducted by myself and or Jennifer.
Is it with the council or the public?
With the public, with the community. So we'll have the community meeting as a general workshop. It will be a sort of a Q&A opportunity as well as an input gathering session. Haven't decided if it'll be over Zoom, probably over Zoom, depending on where we're at with the surging at the time. And then the other meeting will be a workshop before the Budget Finance Commission. So it'll be a public meeting, but it would be facilitated with the commissioners as part of a regular agendized discussion. And we would be gathering input in advance of the preparation of the budget then as well.
Okay, great. Yeah, I'll try to be a president at one of those, give some feedback, hear what people have to say. So maybe some other council members want to, just be present.
Yeah, we certainly wouldn't want you to invite any conversation there. Ultimately, you'll be deliberating on the budget. But yes, from a listening in standpoint, that would be certainly helpful.
Yeah. Okay. Councilmember Nairnhood.
Thank you, Mayor Brand. Yeah, Jennifer and Mike, I really appreciate those two updates, those two budget workshop updates. We talked about this at my community meeting after Mike left on Saturday morning. Had a great discussion about 15, 20 minutes about this. And, Manhattan Beach does a community workshop and they do multiple city council budget workshops. And from what I can tell from what the public has said, they really want to get in there and understand what goes on with the budget, why things are done, and the individual's nuts and bolts. And while it's not exactly the best or the most fun thing to go through, I'm sure for city staff, especially at the management level, to have the public come in and start asking questions about all individual nuts and bolts, it helps them give a better, clear understanding as to what's going on. And one of the things that we talked about was not just hey, producing a 10,000 line item budget is okay. Well, that's one thing, but you're never going to be able to digest that. Immediately what the conversation turned towards was tools to be able to see what's actually inside there, so they can actually start looking around and saying, okay, why are we spending X amount of money on these kinds of services across the board? So the transparency is something that people really, really appreciated at my community meeting. I know I really appreciate it. Manhattan Hermosa do a very line item based budget. So having the community input is really important before even the staff puts it together. So thank you I know it's a lot more extra time on everyone's part, but it gives a lot more trust and faith to the whole process. So thank you very much for doing this new welcome change to the budget. That's something that we haven't really worked on in I don't know, 20 years. I think it's always kind of been the same. So thank you.
Okay, Councilmember Obaji.
I just want to thank you as well. Thanks for doing the public outreach on the budget. And my one ask is at some point in the future, well before March 29th, if you come up with a flyer for it, that way we can post it on Instagram and email it out and all that stuff. Cool. Thank you guys. And I'll make a motion to approve this budget schedule.
Is there a second?
Second.
I'll second that.
Okay. Motion by Councilmember Baji, second by Councilmember MD. Any public comment?
Mayor, no public comment on Zoom or e-comment.
Okay, do a roll call vote. Councilmember Narenheim.
Aye.
Councilmember Lowenstein.
Aye.
Councilmember Horvath.
Aye.
Councilmember Baji.
Aye.
And Councilmember MD.
I also agree with Nils. It's great that you're doing those budget workshops. That's wonderful.
Thank you, Jennifer. Okay, next up is a discussion about action pertaining to a possible charter ordinance amendment for voters to approve the implementation of an alternative voting method to replace separate or delayed runoff elections for city elective offices. That's the first time I've seen it described like that. But thank you, Eleanor. Ranked choice voting.
Okay. Yes.
Okay.
So on November 9th, Mayor and council members, we gave a presentation on ranked choice voting. And some of you asked for us to come back and do a demonstration on STAR, which is score, then automate runoff. So we're going to show you a couple of videos. We'll give you an idea of what STAR voting is, and then just a refresher for ranked choice voting. We also have some representatives here. We have Steve Chasen from President Californians for Electrical Reform, main speaker for ranked choice voting. And then Diane Silver, program coordinator from state and local partners. And then we have Star Vote. We have Sarah Volk, executive director from Equal Vote Coalition. So they're here to answer questions and your questions after I finish speaking. And then go ahead and Vicki, if you can do the video for Star.
Is it me or the screen frozen?
I haven't, Vicki? Let's see. I think she's still working on it here.
Take your time.
Eleanor, do you know if STAR voting has been certified yet by the California Secretary of State?
Nope, not at this time. Let's see, while she's doing that. So what I concluded with STAR voting, there are no cities that are doing STAR voting in the state of California. There is no certified vendor to tabulate the ballots. And based on my review, we would also have to remove our 50% plus one. So Vicki, were you able to do that?
Sorry, when I clicked the link, it was not sharing. So let me do that one more time. I apologize. I thought it was sharing the whole time. Give me one second.
Oh, no. Okay. And then while she's getting that prepared. So for ranked choice voting, Dominion is a certified vendor to tabulate ballots. There are 4 right now cities that are using ranked choice voting, and 3 will start in 2022. The city of San Francisco, or county city, has implemented ranked choice voting since 2004. They will use the 50% plus one majority vote. We've had 46 contests since we started runoffs, and 15 contests did not go into a runoff. So the candidates won 50% plus one.
Are you talking about San Francisco?
No, I'm talking about Redondo, city of Redondo.
Okay.
So, and right now there's actually 3 electeds that won 50% plus one, which was the mayor, who has done it a couple times, Councilman Lowenstein, and then me. So,
I did it 4 times. 4 times, but go ahead.
Well, yeah. And it was
bragging,
I knew you did.
I don't get too much.
I know. And then, Vicki, are you still having problems with that?
I can share it if it's the how to start voting.
Yeah, well, I put the.
Okay, cool.
I'm not sure what's happening, and I'm in quarantine right now, so I'm here at home, so I can't do it from my iPad.
Oh, Vicki, you gotta choose the share audio. So if you'd like, oh no, I can't do it while you're doing it. But you got to stop sharing and then reshare and check the button, optimize for video and share audio.
I'm sorry, I wasn't aware about the share audio selection. Just
here, I can do it if you want.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you.
Can you all hear it? Oh, here.
Runoff. At STAR voting work. STAR stands for Score, Then Automatic Runoff. And that's exactly how it works. Just give your favorite 5 stars, give your least favorite 0, and score the others as you like. With STAR, it's easy to show your preference order and also your level of support for each candidate. It's safe to vote your conscience, and you don't have to worry about voting for the lesser of 2 evils or wasting your vote. Now let's see how the ballots are counted. Here's the first ballot. This voter gave 3 stars to Abby, 4 stars to Ben, 0 stars to Carmen, and 5 stars to DeAndre. Here's the second ballot. Note that this voter gave Abby and DeAndre the same score, which is permitted in STAR voting. We'll add these stars to the total, and we'll continue adding up the scores until all the ballots are counted. The 2 highest scoring candidates are finalists. The remaining candidates are out of the running. Now it's time for the second round of tabulation, the automatic runoff. Each ballot counts as 1 vote for the finalist each voter preferred. Let's see how many people preferred Carmen over DeAndre and vice versa. This voter preferred DeAndre to Carmen, so this vote goes to DeAndre. This voter also preferred DeAndre to Carmen. Note that their favorite candidate was Abby, but she didn't make it to the runoff round. Even though this voter's favorite couldn't win, their vote still makes a difference and goes to the finalist they preferred, DeAndre. This voter gave both DeAndre and Carmen 5 stars, indicating that they like both equally. Since this voter would be equally happy with either, this ballot is counted as a vote of no preference. This voter preferred Carmen to DeAndre, so this vote goes to Carmen. And the last voter preferred DeAndre to Carmen, so this vote goes to DeAndre. Regardless of the scores given, each ballot ultimately counts as 1 vote. DeAndre wins. DeAndre was in the top 2 highest scoring candidates, and he had the greatest number of voters prefer him over Carmen. Star voting measured how strongly voters liked DeAndre and also how many voters supported him. So to recap, STAR stands for Score, Then Automatic Runoff. And that's exactly how it works. Voters fill out the ballot on a 0 to 5 star scale. The 2 candidates with the most stars advance to the automatic runoff. The candidate preferred by the most voters wins. Now that you know how it works, want to try out star voting for yourself? Create your own star voting polls at star.vote. And to learn more, donate, or volunteer at starvoting.us.
But a runoff could still occur if they get the same amount, right, at the end.
Correct.
You mean
I'm sorry, what was that again?
there's a tie?
Yeah, imagine that Carmen.
No. What happens if there's a tie, Ellen?
Right. That's what we need to know.
I'll have
Same of any
Star
election.
vote just since they're here. So,
Well, no, our
Sarah?
charter in the city of Redondo Beach, we could have a tie anytime.
We have a resolution that technically we have to flip a coin, or straws. That's what we do. We actually have a resolution that does that.
Got it. All right.
Okay.
Can you imagine that?
I know, really. But we do
I know
have
somebody
resolutions
missed
that
getting in the
there.
runoff by one single vote. One vote, they missed getting in the runoff.
Hanging tabs.
That's happened. So, and then I wanted to do the ranked choice voting. Vicki, can you get that in? Okay. Okay, let's see. There we go.
Is there sound to this?
Yeah, there should be sound.
I'm not hearing anything.
All right, let me see if I can find that video. NYC ranked choice voting.
Borough President, and City Council. Hey NYC voters, there's a new way to vote for your city officials in 2021. The City of New York will use the ranked choice voting method for all NYC primaries and special elections for mayor, public advocate, comptroller, borough president, and city council. Ranked choice voting gives New York voters more choice than ever before. Rather than choosing just one candidate, now you have the option to rank up to 5 of your favorite candidates. Here's how it works. Mark your ballot by order of preference, ranking as many or as few candidates as you like. In the first column, fill in the oval next to your first choice candidate, your second choice in the second column, followed by your third, fourth, and fifth choice. At the close of Election Day, all first choice votes are counted. The candidate to receive over 50% of votes wins. If no candidate receives over 50% of the first choice votes, the race moves to round 2. The person with the least number of votes is eliminated. If your first choice candidate does not win and they're eliminated, we then count your second choice vote and add it to the candidate's total. This process continues until we have a winner. Go to vote.nyc to learn more about NYC ranked choice voting and upcoming elections.
Okay, so those were the 2 videos. And then I mentioned some of the things that related to star voting and ranked choice voting. The other things, ranked choice voting has a lot of numerous resources, especially since they've been in California, and also worked with the California Election Code. The other thing is that what need direction from council is which election. Again, we have June 7th, 2022, November 8th, 2022. And then again, the June, we could bring it to the March 7th, 2023 election if the voters decide to do the alternative method. November 8th, we would have to push that to 2025. We can also put this measure on the March 7th, 2023 election, which is our own general municipal election. And that concludes my presentation. And again, you have questions. I have both Star Vote and ranked choice voting representatives here.
Great. Thank you, Eleanor. Are those choices you just gave us, June, November, or the next election? Which one would, I mean, how do the costs associated with the city fall out? I mean, I would imagine just doing it as part of our regular election would be the cheapest route to go.
Right, because we have to do that election. And then, of course, if we have measures, so that would be the least expensive. And then I think I had 222,000 for the June 7th, and I think it was 175K for November 8th.
Yeah, November is going to be a huge ballot, and we will.
But again, if the voters decide, we would not be able to implement until for 2025.
Right.
Because we've already called the election, plus we're doing nominations, and then we've already made our contracts with our vendors.
So
before that November election.
The answers you want from us tonight is which election in which process. Is that correct?
Correct. Well, which election, and then what do you want us to provide the voters? Ranked choice voting, star voting? Those are the questions.
Okay, well, as a representative from Sarah Walker, you were star voting, Sarah, or ranked choice?
That's right. Yeah, I'm Sarah Wolk with the Equal Vote Coalition. So we're a nonpartisan group and here tonight to talk about star voting.
Mm-hmm.
But to start with, I just want to thank you all for considering this issue. I think it's one of the most impactful things that can be done at the local level, and Redondo Beach has done a great job so far, really considering the facts and weighing the options. So that's rare, and we are always glad to see it.
Mm-hmm. So you're representing star voting, though, Sarah? Not ranked choice?
That's right. Yeah, star voting. And I've been involved in this for over a decade. I started off as a strong advocate and worked on ranked choice voting for years, but star voting came along as basically an upgrade to the ranked choice voting concept. So they have a lot in common. They're both preference voting methods. They would both allow us to skip the primary and just have a single general election. A lot of the pros, I think, apply to both, but there are significant differences, and that's why star voting was invented in the first place, to address valid concerns.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, I think our valid concern is they're not certified. So that's a problem. That's a big problem. I mean, it'd be difficult to select them knowing they haven't been certified by the Secretary of State. I mean, that's a big problem.
And on that one, we've spoken to a couple of elections vendors who have assured us that star voting absolutely can be certified. The main process for that is that a municipality such as yourselves needs to decide, yes, we want to use star voting. And that's what sets the process into motion for the vendor to then create the software upgrade. It's just a software upgrade. Star voting is counted using addition. It's Scantron level technology like we all used in kindergarten. Those of us who are, under 40. And so Clear Ballot and Heart InterCivic are both able to add star voting integration software update. And then that would start the certification process, which generally would take about a year from what we've heard from numerous sources.
So why don't they just do the upgrade? Why does the city have to sign up for it before they do the upgrades? It's just a money thing.
Exactly. Election vendors are, you're the customer. And so the customer has to demand the product. And I wish it wasn't that way, but it does look like it may well happen in the near future that somebody adds it preemptively to kind of corner the market. But right now, both Heart InterCivic and Clear Ballot assured us that it would be really helpful on their end to have a municipality request it specifically.
Yeah, it would take a year. So, you're basically asking us to go out on the bleeding edge of this, and I don't think we're going to do. I could be mistaken. So, now what's this? You got to be under 40 to have used a Scantron?
Well, I'm 38, and I definitely did Scantron in elementary school. So
Yeah, well, I'm 64 and I did Scantron in elementary school. So
There you go. I'm in between. I'm not going to say which one, but I also did Scantron.
Yeah, there you go. Scantron's been around for I don't know how long. Anyway, thank you, Sarah.
Not rocket science.
Stick around for questions. It'd be good. Councilmember Obaji.
Well, might we hear from, I see that there is also a Steve Chesson and somebody else was on. We could just hear, they must be representing something or somebody. So if they want to chime in first.
Yeah, they just didn't have their hand up. So I see a Diane Silver. Diane, why don't you go ahead?
Thank you. And I would echo Sarah's thanks for inviting us to be here to represent our organizations. I'm with Fair Vote. Fair Vote is a national organization that advocates for ranked choice voting. We've been around for about 30 years. Fair Vote ranked choice voting is a very tried and true voting method. People always think of it as a new method only because it's new to us here in the United States. It's new to voters who have never done it before, but it's actually been in use for over 100 years. It's been in use in Australia and in Ireland and other smaller countries for over 100 years. It's been in use for many decades, over 40, 50, 60 years in the city of Cambridge and in some cities across the country. It's been in use, as you know, for over 10 years in California, in the Bay Area. So there have been hundreds and hundreds of ranked choice voting elections and millions of ballots cast that document how effective it is. So all of the claims that we make about the benefits of ranked choice voting are based on data in terms of how it actually works. We have some concerns about star voting. It's an interesting idea. But I feel like I feel obliged to share the perspective. It sometimes is referred to as an upgrade to ranked choice voting. It's actually not. What it was is it was a brainstorm. Some ranked choice voting advocates were involved in the original conceptualization of it, this idea. But as it's turned out, it doesn't deliver on the benefits. One of the biggest problems with star voting is that it's a hybrid model where, it's got these two rounds where first you score and then there's this instant runoff. And the problem is that there are strategies for each of those methods and they're incompatible. And so one of the biggest criteria that we have for choosing a voting method that's going to be the best is that it needs to not be subject to strategic voting. One of the biggest problems that we have with plurality voting, what's led to so much of the polarization that we have today is because of the way that voters vote strategically. The whole problem with vote splitting, for example, we have this partisanship, this polarization, because if you ever get two candidates who have similar views, there's this problem of the vote being split, and then the candidate on the other side, whichever side is the other side, in your opinion, that candidate can win. And so voters are forced to vote strategically, where people feel like, well, I really like candidate B, but I know they're a long shot, so I better not vote for them. I better just vote for candidate A because I don't want candidate C to win because I really don't like them. And we feel that voters shouldn't have to play these kinds of mind games. The best voting method is when voters can just vote honestly. And so a concern that we have about star voting is that in round one, where you're doing the scoring, there are certain strategies where you think, well, I want to make sure that my favorite makes it to the runoff round. And so one problem is voters might not vote honestly in scoring other candidates. Like, I like candidate B, but if I give them any points at all, it's going to help them overtake candidate A, and I like candidate A better. And I don't want to help B make it to the runoff instead of A. So there's these mind games going on that voters have to do. And so they don't always vote honestly, and it often devolved into what we call bullet voting, where voters choose to only vote for one candidate, even though they have the option to do this wonderful scoring where they can express preference for multiple candidates. They don't. And that's one of the problems is that the method hasn't taken into account actual voter behavior. And then the second part is that when you do the runoff, it showed it in the video, if a voter scored the two candidates that make it to the runoff with the same score, their ballot doesn't count. The video is euphemistic. It's, they call it a no preference vote. But I would invite you to think about your own voting behavior when you're faced with a list of candidates. How often do you honestly and truly have no preference between two of them? Do you really like two of the candidates absolutely equally? It's very rare. Most voters really do have preferences between different candidates, even if they like one or two candidates pretty well, they're pretty similar. If you said this one versus this one, they would have a preference. And so with ranked choice voting, the candidates have that opportunity to distinguish among as many voters as possible, as allowed, by ranking: first choice, second choice, third choice, fourth choice, and their vote counts all the way to the end. And there's no strategy involved. You just vote honestly. So those are just a few of my comments. And I know Steve Cheston is here from Californians for Electoral Reform, and he has vast knowledge of the California voting laws and can talk about ranked choice voting's compatibility and usability in California. So thank you for the opportunity.
Great, thank you, Nancy. Let's go on to Steve. And Steve, why don't you give us your few minutes?
Yeah, hi, my name is Steve Cheston and my pronouns are he, him, and I'm president of Californians for Electoral Reform. We got started about the same time that Fair Vote got started in, I think it was either 1993 or 1994. And we do educational advocacy work around ranked choice voting and forms of proportional representation. Diane articulated a lot of the things, a lot of very good points. I know that was a lot of words. I did prepare a couple of slides that illustrate some of those issues that she raised with star voting. And if it's okay with the city clerk, I'd like to show those.
When you say a couple of slides, you really mean like 2 slides? Or?
2 slides.
2 slides, okay. I don't object.
Would it be possible?
Can he share his screen?
Yeah, he can share. He should be able to share his
screen. Okay, I'm on an iPad and I really don't know if this is going to work. I did email them to Ms. Cronenberger and Ms. Mazzano in advance, just in case they could share them, but I will try it.
Well, if it doesn't work, you can just talk to him.
Well, a lot easier if I can do this. Actually, let me stop that. Let me get the application open that I'm going to need first. There we go. It's taking a while to open. Good. Okay, now let me go back to Zoom. Share content. Screen. Oh, start broad. Oh, gosh. You have to forgive me. I'm not used to doing this.
If you hit share screen, what you're trying to share should pop up as a selection.
Yeah. Okay. Good. Then let me get
you're trying to share
the application up that I want. Can you see this?
Yes.
I'm sorry.
There you go.
Okay. So consider a simple example. We've got 3 candidates, Ann, Bob, and Carl, and we have 5 voters that I've numbered V1 through V5. And the first 3 voters really like Ann, and Bob's okay, and Carl is less okay. So they give Ann a score of 5 and Bob a score of 4, Carl a score of 3. And then the other 2 voters, they really like Carl. Bob is sort of okay, and they're not happy with Ann at all. So when you add up all the scores, you see that Ann has a score of 15, Bob has a score of 18, Carl has a score of 19. So Bob and Carl have the highest scores, so they advance to the automatic runoff, which Bob wins 3-2 because the 3 V1 through V3 preferred Bob to Carl. Those are the 3 votes. and the V4 and V5 voters preferred Carl to Bob. So those are the two. But notice that a clear majority, 3-2, prefer Ann to all others, yet Ann loses. This can't happen under ranked choice voting. In ranked choice voting, if a clear majority supports one candidate, that candidate will win. Secondly, Bob is no one's favorite candidate, yet he wins. This also can't happen under ranked choice voting. You can't win if you're everybody's second choice, but nobody's first choice. And this also affects the way people campaign, and I'll talk about that in a minute. Finally, the score that V1 through V3 gave to Bob, their second favorite candidate, hurt their first favorite, hurt Ann. If one of them, say V1, had given Bob a score of 0 instead, that would have altered the scores. So Ann would have made the runoff round against Carl, and then Ann would have won. So under ranked choice voting, your second favorite can never hurt your first favorite. And voters quickly find out that if a sincere second choice, or for star voting, a sincere score for your second favorite can hurt your sincere first choice, people stop voting sincerely and start voting strategically. This happened, Dartmouth University, their alumni group used to elect their alumni board of trustees, alumni association board of trustees using approval voting. Approval voting is kind of like star, except you only have scores of 0 and 1. You either approve of someone or you don't. And it worked well for the first couple of cycles, but then people realized if they approved their second choice, it hurt their first choice, and it just deteriorated back into simple plurality voting. So they abandoned it. And then there was also a system used in the early part of the 20th century called Buckland.
Nancy covered that, Stephen. It's bullet voting, so we get it.
Okay, thank you. And then there's a system called Buckland, which is also a ranked system, where if no one got a majority of first choices, they would add everybody's second choice to their first choices to see if they got someone now had a majority, and they would keep that, repeating that procedure. But again, people realized that their second choice would hurt their first choice. And so they stopped ranking second choices. And again, it deteriorated back to plurality. So I'm going to end my share if I can. Okay, great. So those are the points that I wanted to make. I want to talk about campaign style. If you can be everybody's second choice, but nobody's first choice, and what that does to campaigning. Let's start with the way you have your current elections, where you have a general election, and if no one gets a majority, then you have a runoff election. Well, in that first election, pre-pandemic, of course, you'd be walking precincts. And if you saw somebody with a lawn sign for one of your opponents, you'd skip that house and go on to the next one.
No, he was not necessarily. I didn't. I want to get that sign removed. I want him to replace my sign.
Oh yeah, exactly.
That's exactly what you want to know. That's exactly the
Actually, what they say is the guy just came by and asked me to put the sign. He didn't even sell himself. Yeah. So I said yes. So great. Can I put mine too? Yep.
Okay. Well, with ranked choice voting, there's a definite incentive to talk to that person with a sign for one of your opponents, because you may not convince them to rank you first, but at least you have a good chance of getting them to rank you second. And you may need those second choice selections in order to win. Now, suppose you can win by being everybody's second choice and nobody's first choice. That's going to encourage you to be bland, to not take strong stands on controversial issues, because if someone asks you about a controversial issue, you're likely to say, well, that's very important. That's a very important issue to our town. And there's people on both sides who make a lot of good points on both sides. And if and when that ever comes before council, what I'm going to have to do is poll my constituents to see how a majority of them feel and vote that way. So you're not going to be, there's no incentive to take strong stands on controversial issues. Whereas with ranked choice voting, just like with your current system, you need to take strong stands on some issues to make sure you have that strong first choice support from enough voters so that you do not get eliminated as the rounds progress. So that's one of my concerns about star voting, is that there's an incentive to try to be the bland candidate who's everybody's second choice, but nobody's first choice. And I'm sure Sarah would like to respond to many of the things that I've said.
Okay, well, let's give Sarah a chance, and then we got to go to the council. So thank you. This is great. Go ahead, Sarah. Make it quick, please.
Yeah, I was asked not to have a presentation, and I do have tons of slides as well to rebut a lot of the things that were said there. But I think just to take them in order, ranked choice voting doesn't ensure a majority preferred winner. It doesn't comply with your code as written. And part of the reason for that is that when you can support multiple candidates with a preferential voting method like star or ranked choice voting, there may well be multiple majority preferred candidates. Does a majority of council support pizza? Does a majority of council like Thai food? Probably a majority likes both. And so what you need to find is which majority is stronger in that case. So in order to find a majority, a voting method narrows it down to two options only. Star does that in one way, ranked choice does it in another. So in star voting, we find the top two most popular, most supported, most starred candidates, and they advance to a runoff, which works essentially exactly like a top two general election now. And between of voters who had a preference between those two finalists, you will always have a majority preferred winner. And that is as much as is technically possible. You can't have more of a majority than that. There may well be three polarized factions. In some cases, a majority doesn't exist. But as written, your election law, I think, does support star voting. And I have a slide about that I'd be happy to share for follow-up for those of you that want to see it. And then...
Well, can you just explain that, how our election law doesn't it support both? I mean, how does our election law discriminate between star voting versus ranked choice voting? Well, what election law? What are you talking about?
So your code requires that a majority of ballots cast for either candidate, that the winner have a majority of votes out of all ballots cast. And star voting always counts every single ballot in that runoff. Ranked choice voting does not count every ballot in the final round. In the deciding round of, on average, 10% of ranked choice voting elections, 10% of ballots are deemed exhausted ballots. And those are votes that are unable to transfer and are not counted in the deciding round. So in ranked choice voting, Steve and Diane both made a point of saying that, of talking about strategic voting. In ranked choice voting, it's not necessarily strategically safe to vote for your favorite in first choice. It is safe in ranked choice to support other candidates beyond your favorite, but just like our current system, there is a strong incentive to vote lesser evil if you don't think your favorite can win. And I can explain that for you.
Well, that's okay. Let's go to council questions, and I think more of these issues will get vetted. But thank you, everybody, for your presentations. I think it was only fair to give Sarah another crack. Anyway, but it'll all come out in these questions, I'm sure. So let's get going. Councilmember Obaji.
All right. Thank you. Also, thank you guys for your and gals for your presentations. And I feel like this is such an important issue that we might, have to do this again and call some political scientists to explain to us from the universities. But in any event, my question for the ranked choice voting folks is, what percentage of ballots in these ranked choice voting elections are disqualified because somebody voted incorrectly? Is it 10% or is it some other percent? There must be a percentage, right? Nobody's voting.
Yeah, I can take that one, and I appreciate the opportunity. So Sarah mentioned that 10% figure. That comes from a study from a number of years ago, but we crunched numbers from New York City, which is the biggest test of ranked choice voting to date. They used it in their primary elections back in June, and we found that nearly 10% of ballots were unable to be counted in the final round. So that 10% figure matches, but here's the thing. When you look at why they are disqualified is where it gets very interesting. 9%, not of the 10%, but 9% of all the ballots were exhausted because the voters chose not to use all of the rankings. That's the same as exhausted ballots are the same as exhausted voters, right? It's when you have each voting. each round is a runoff round, and choosing not to use all the rankings is like choosing not to show up at the runoff, is to say I'm allowed to go back to the polls and vote among the remaining candidates, but I don't like any of the remaining candidates, so I'm not choosing to vote for any of them that are left. I've ranked the 3 that I like, and I don't like the remaining 2.
Were they disqualified because they didn't complete the rankings? Is that it?
It's because they chose not to, but disqualified because they got disenfranchised.
Can you make a rule? Hold on one second. Can you make a rule that an empty ranking is a 0 or like last place ranking?
An empty ranking is I didn't vote for them. Yeah, it would be last place. It would be I'm voting for them last place, but you're not casting a vote for that candidate. You're saying I'm not voting at all.
Right. What percentage of ballots do we know got disqualified because the person put 2 people in the same ranking?
Less than 1%.
Okay.
It was like 0.8.
All right. As for, I had my concerns about star voting. I do like star voting as a concept more, but I had my concerns about star voting and how somebody could come ahead of somebody who got essentially a majority preference. And then Mr. Chesson's demonstration and table that certainly proved that. But I also think about the strategic voting. And when I took political science at UC Berkeley back in the day, political psychology, I should say, this idea of people manipulating their ballots already exists in our current system because people don't want to vote for a loser, right? If you say, oh, I didn't, he's a great guy, but he barely campaigned, he didn't fundraise enough, he's not going to win, he's not going to get voters' vote because they don't want to waste their vote. Likewise, to the extent they perceive somebody is already winning, then they might cast their vote for that person because they don't want to waste their vote. They want it to count and they want to vote for the winner. So that psychology, there's strategy and strategery in all of the voting that occurs, including any ranked choice system or star system that we move to. The only thing I'm really strongly feeling about right now is that we should just put this on our June 2023 election, because if we're to do it any sooner, we would be incurring the cost that we specifically seek to avoid in a runoff election, right? Is that right, Eleanor? Because or is a runoff going to cost us more than an early election in either May or June? Sorry, May or November.
Okay, so are you talking about when to do the election? Because March 7th is 2023. So you're talking about
March 7th, 2023 is what I'm intending, because we're already going to have a municipal election, just lump it into there.
Right. But if we have, if we have
a runoff, how much is that going to cost us?
Okay, so as I mentioned, a district runoff would be between 30 and 50,000. And then citywide would be, I think 80 to 100,000.
Okay, so not as much as a whole new election, as if we calendared one for June or November to go along with the straight state elections.
Yeah.
All right, and then is it possible, Eleanor, for us to give the residents a choice between ranked choice voting and star voting on the ballot?
Well, we can do whatever the council decides. The only concern I have is that, if they're not certified by then, that's an issue.
Right. So when's the last date by which we would, when's the last date by which we need to decide what goes on the ballot?
Okay, so if we
decided to go with the March 2020
so we have until December 6th, 2022 to call the election.
What I'd like to do is decide to put this, I'd like to make a motion to put this on the ballot in March 2023 in the regular municipal election, and to have a further discussion about what we're going to put on the ballot sometime before December. That gives star voting an opportunity to get certified.
August. I'll second that, but it's got to be done before August.
Okay, fine.
The election gets called in September.
Well, the election gets called in October, however, because that's for nominations, but the last time we can put a measure on a ballot is December 6th. So everything would have to be ready And that's the last day to call a measure.
So I'd say, but let's bring it back before November 20.
Yeah, I would say October. Let's just say October that way.
All right.
Because you want to understand, people who are candidates might decide what the outcome of that particular. Well, actually, it wouldn't matter anymore.
Well, it wouldn't matter on that.
Yeah, it wouldn't matter.
The measure. It would just
You're
be
right.
the measure that would go.
You're right. Yeah.
All right. That's it. Thank you.
I'll second that.
Thank you.
Okay, so there's a motion to come back next October with discussion about putting a charter amendment on our March 2023 election to go to ranked choice voting. Is that the motion?
Yes.
Or star.
Or star.
Sorry. Yeah, key difference. Okay.
Leave the field open.
Councilmember Lowenstein.
Yeah, thanks, Mayor Brown. I'm a little bit concerned about putting the choice of star voting or ranked choice voting to voters. I think it's going to be very confusing for people. And I think we need to decide, if we decide to do this, we do this as a council. I don't think most voters are paying attention to this. We're going to have an uphill battle anyway to persuade them to go to some form of ranked choice voting. So
Did we say we were going to give them a choice? I thought we were just going to discuss both. Maybe I missed
but
something.
Mr. Abaji suggested that, and I think we have to be very careful about that. So I'm also, I think I'm fine with March to bring this to voters. If it passes, we have 2 years to educate people on this, and so it's not rushing it. It's going to be some education. I do have some questions though about the cost estimates. Eleanor, if you could explain, for example, it says $515,000. It seems very high.
Okay,
that's what the county said?
No. Okay, so this is what, if the voters say yes, this is related to ranked choice voting, then we would, that would be the cost to do the first alternative method of voting, because, and that's probably that was probably based on ranked choice voting. I don't know what it would be for star voting, but the reason it's high is because it's for voter education. To do voter outreach is where we're going to have to do a lot of, publications, media, just different, going to different, going to different community areas and things like that. I mean, we're going to have to do a lot of, and that'll be the first time, and then the second time it probably might be the same, and then it starts dwindling down because now we've educated the residents.
But it says $100,000 to $200,000, which maybe I can understand, whatever, if it's the higher or the lower. But then it says print and mail, $150,000 to $175,000. We just conducted an election for $40,000 of postage and printing in 2021, right? If you look at the page before that.
Right.
So why is it so much more to do mailing and printing that seems a little bit high.
I did it based on, I think a certain amount per voter. I don't know what it's going to be.
Yeah, I know it's some guesswork. It seems really high, right? I mean, some of it's going to be, a lot of it's going to be social media or videos online. I think that's a great way of reaching people. Yeah, we'll send it to people. A lot of people aren't online, and I understand that, but that seems like, so this total, I'm fine with us bringing this to voters. In fact, I encourage it. I mean, one thing we have to remember is it's expensive to conduct another election. We know that, but it's also exhausting. People hate, people don't want to have people knocking on their doors another week after somebody else has come there. It's just exhausting to people. It's exhausting to candidates. It costs money to candidates. It costs money for candidates to go out and reach donors. I mean, it's just exhausting. Okay. So there's a cost to it, but there's also a serious benefit to it. And there's also less limbo. The city's in less limbo. We know who our leaders are going to be after election night. We're not going to have to wait another 6 or 8 weeks. So I want, if we decide to do this, that we kind of nail down to some degree a little bit better what we're going to, it's what's going to cost us, and when are we going to put this in the budget? Will it be for next year's budget? We have $144,000. So how much extra is this going to cost us to run it on the March 2023 ballot?
Okay, so for the March 23 ballot, I have it, right now it's an estimate of $300K. And that's just for putting the measure, right? Putting the measure on.
In addition to the regular?
No. That is the whole. So the last election, we spent about 200 and 16. So this, I'm saying 300K for just our regular election. And that would include the measure on there. So this isn't on top of.
It's not even including an outreach or anything like that because that hasn't paid yet. That hasn't been voted on yet.
The voters have to vote for it.
Right.
We can't do any outreach on that part because
they haven't voted. Right. We can't take a stand on it one way or another. Right.
Right.
Okay. So you think it'll cost an extra $84,000 to conduct the election in March versus $178,000 and 200 and something thousand, I think. 222,000, 175 and 222. So, yeah, I mean, the other thing is that's another reason to go in March of 2023 is it's going to cost us less. It's also more informed. I don't want to say more informed electorate, more engaged electorate. I would say that votes in city elections than say a general election that they don't really care about. It's on the last page of the ballot a lot of times and stuff. So I would agree. I think the motion is a good motion. Maybe we come back a little earlier than October, especially if this is going to involve some type of a budget appropriation. We need to think about that as well too. So for next year, for 2022 and 2023, right?
Well, for the 2023, that will come with the budget in July.
So you'll be able to budget for, we'll be able to budget ahead of time before deciding to put this on the ballot.
Right. Well, I mean, I always put in a buffer because if we have measures, because I never know if we're going to have measures.
Okay. Right.
So I'm probably going to, pretty much around the same thing. It's going to be 300K no matter what, because I don't know what kind of measures the council is going to bring. And then we have an initiative right now. So. Okay.
All right. And I don't have a preference one way or another for ranked choice right now or star. I mean, I think there's merits to both. And I really want to do a deeper dive. So I think the idea is fine to bring it back. So I'm good. That's it. Thank you.
Okay, Councilmember Nairnham.
Thank you, Mayor Brand. So the first thing I'm going to say is I find it very curious that, the first thing I noticed was both sides came out here and talked about fairness and about being open and being positive. But then Diane immediately curtailed into a negative campaign style, attack style. We're going to go after the other side, which raised my suspicions. And then, the second presenter went on and started giving a presentation, which was clearly not part of the game. So this makes it seem very much like a political fight between two people who have an idea or an idea, not people, but groups that have ideology that ours is better, which just goes more towards the idea of Councilmember Obaji's motion of putting both of these on the agenda on the election. And as long as we can get this, get star is certified by someone in California. Now we talked about, Eleanor, you talked about being certified at a contractor level, but does the state need to certify the methodology as well?
So the state certifies the equipment and the actual program that tabulates the elections. I mean, the ballots.
So not necessarily that we are or not allowed to use a particular methodology. They're only doing the equipment and that, hey, 1 + 1 = 2.
Right.
Okay.
That I know of. Yep.
So how many municipalities, Sarah, how many municipalities have used the star voting methodology in the United States?
So this is really, I think, the main thing that is a con for star voting. Star voting is new. The reason, again, it was invented is because there was a need for it to have a system that allows preferential voting and counts all the ballot data. But star voting was used at the statewide level for the Independent Party of Oregon for their primary election in 2020, and it was used at the statewide level by the Democratic Party of Oregon for the presidential delegate elections to the Democratic National Convention. And we're hoping it'll be on the ballot in either Portland or Eugene coming up soon for municipal adoption.
Okay. So it's not like it has been used some elsewhere in large statewide elections. That's important. The conversation with getting into the thought process of a voter, I think is completely absurd. I worked a voting booth. I was in charge of a voting center actually last November. And voters come in and vote for a particular candidate for a myriad of different reasons, and some of which has absolutely nothing to do with other than that they were given a piece of paper and that it's a flyer that was mailed to their house that I'm going to be voting according to this particular guide. So trying to get into the thought process of a voter as to why they vote and how they vote and when they stop voting, I think is completely ridiculous. There are some voters that just vote on the federal election for the presidency. Some voters come in and just to vote for their Congress member. Some people don't vote ever in a local election, period. So it's a myriad of different reasons. Getting into a voter's head as to how they vote and why they vote is a long, is a circular conversation. So I do believe our city we have to upgrade our system, because having while our election code allows for a 3-month window, and we always push it towards the end of that window, it's not easy to have it closer to that, the runoff closer to the original election, because we have to mail out ballots, because we have to certify the election. Certification of the election takes a month anyways. Then you have to restart an entire new campaign. That's expensive and it takes a lot of time. And as Councilmember Lowenstein said, the community doesn't necessarily even want to go through that anymore. They want to see a simpler system, because they don't want the vote get into the voter apathy. I've been through 2 elections now, and actually multiple elections, and I see it all the time. Hey, I made my decision. This is what it is. And kind of move on from there. So I definitely want to give the voters a choice to decide and update our voting system. I like the motion on the floor the way we have it. And that's it. Thank you.
Okay, let's finish with the council, and then Sarah had her hand up, but Councilmember MD.
So just to be clear, what we're voting on now is to consider on the March 2023 is just to change the municipal code. And it could be written in a way that that it doesn't have to detail any system, I imagine, because we could, and the idea of that, the reason why that would be attractive to me is that who knows what the future is going to be, and we don't want to marry it to one particular system anyway. We just want to have the possibility of having these instant runoffs in which they have, they're very similar systems, and you can kind of create the municipal code accordingly. So we don't really, it's kind of premature to go whether it's STAR, whether it's ranked choice. I agree that the fact that STAR is not certified by the Secretary of State is a huge disadvantage to them at this point. And as far as voter outreach and that budget's concerned, we have lots of community partners that we can outreach where, as in the report, the Voter Choice Act helps support, has $40 million in federal grants to be able to help with the transition. We also have the League of Women Voters. There's plenty of people that can help us with community outreach. And as far as the money that we're talking about, it seems to me that we would save money over the long run by not having the runoff elections. And so all those points aren't really necessary until we get to the budget talks later on. And as far as which one's better or not better, we can kind of put that aside and give STAR time to get certified or not, because I agree with Mr. Obagi, that's a huge negative on that point. But either way, I think we should just, after we hear from the public, we can just vote to give people a choice on whether or not to change that municipal code, because that's really what we're talking about right now.
So what you stated in my motion isn't what my motion is, but I think your kind of intuition is probably better, which is that you just change the charter to say that council shall designate the manner of election by municipal code, right? Is that what you're saying?
Well, I'm going to leave that up to the lawyers to decide exactly how to say it, but yeah, it gives us, it's written in a way that gives us flexibility in that it doesn't, because right now it says that you have to have a runoff 70 days from the time of election. It would be, could be as simple as we will have an instant runoff based on, whatever method is chosen. Exactly. In the vein of what you're saying. Yes.
Yeah, we're not making that decision tonight, but I get it.
Okay,
Yeah.
but yeah, so that we have a fruitful hearing in October or whenever it is, maybe we should have that be part of the motion, which is direction to the city attorney's office, prepare, this would be amendment to the motion, prepare essentially language that would kick it to an ordinance that allows us to avoid majority vote runoff elections.
Yeah,
That's a city charter change.
That's charter and ordinance. That's what I have on there, because there's going to be some ordinance and then there's going to be some charter changes. That's what we're looking at.
Okay, Councilmember Horvath.
Weren't we just talking about this?
We were. We were. I don't normally mute, but there's a lot of background noise today. So I, came into this, having spoken to people at STAR and people at Fair Vote and RCV over these past, 3 or 4 years, and, just kind of open-minded. I tend to lean, I think, after tonight more towards the RCV point of view. And I agree with Councilmember Lowenstein. I think, whichever model is chosen should be chosen by the council, not, by public vote. I think we can make that determination as to which one is going to be best. What I will agree with what Councilwoman Emdy just said. The fact that STAR is not certified clearly is not helpful, but I hear what Sarah's saying, that, any municipality could make that happen. I agree with the mayor. I don't know that we need to be on the bleeding edge of that. Fair Vote and RCV is already used in San Francisco since 2004, I think is what the staff report said. And it's been working. And actually, I'm curious, going back to the point that was made about education and research, Councilwoman Emdy did just mention some funding that was available, but Fair Vote, do you guys also do outreach as a national organization and education? I'm just wondering, Diane.
We do some outreach and education, but generally there are other organizations who are more focused on the voter education for implementation. We do more education and outreach in this context, where we're helping people understand what ranked choice voting is and how it works to decide if it's something you want to adopt. The widespread voter education for how to cast your ballot is a different animal, and there are other NGOs that do that, just because we can't do it all.
Great. Thank you for clarifying. Mm-hmm. Yeah, listen, I think at the end of the day, the whole point of this discussion, and, one that we brought up some years ago as well, was, to avoid the runoffs. And there's only 2 of us here that have gone through runoff, and it's not fun. It's exhausting to the point that Councilmember Lowenstein made, although you haven't gone through one, Todd, as far as I know. So it's exhausting to watch, I think, as much as it is to participate.
It's murder,
It really is. And from our perspective, and Nils and I can speak to this, your first meeting being the first meeting of budget cycle is, you're drinking through a fire hose. So, not to say that you can't do it, but it's not the best way to begin to acclimate yourself to public service and and everything. So, I feel like in our meeting in November, the push was to try to get this on the June ballot. I would personally always prefer putting it on a general, just because I believe that more turnout is better. I hear what you're saying, Todd, about, sometimes people are not paying attention to the bottom of the ballot, but I think that when there's more people voting, that's always a good thing. And so you get more input on that. So yeah, I'm for, I don't have a preference, although Eleanor, actually just looking at these numbers here, if you were to do it in the general, I noticed that you say 3 measures is 136,000. Are you anticipating 3 measures in the November general, or?
That was, what I do is I sort of, I go through their calculator and I just put in 3 measures just because I don't know what someone's going to want to add.
No, I hear you, but I mean, let's just go under the assumption that this was the only measure on a general, then what is that true cost? Because we're not running that November election.
Right.
That's going to be the county.
Well, it's 175,000, and if it's going to be one measure, it could be like 170,000. We're not talking about a huge difference.
Got it. So it's more than the 144 that we set aside. Is that
right?
Okay.
Correct.
All right.
Correct.
So
Yeah,
for Lowenstein's point, the 144 covers the differential between you running a March election and just adding a ballot measure to that March election.
Correct.
Okay. All right. Thank you for clarifying. All right. So, I have no problem with doing it in March. And as long as the motion is from Mr. Obaji is to just change the charter, and then we will suss out, what the which one is used as a council beyond that. I would be fine with that.
So let me just clarify that. Or we are clarifying that we're not going to choose one in the charter. So we could choose one or the other, or we could say we're going to decide and enact an ordinance. So the charter delegates the power to the city council to pass an ordinance that controls the elections. That could occur. That third option could occur, right? That's what Councilmember MD is talking about, if I'm understanding her correctly.
I don't understand.
Yeah, you asked me there too.
So currently, the election, the charter says you got to have a 50% or else a runoff, over 50% or else a runoff. What we are saying, and this was a concern I had before, is rather than choose one that we are hemming the city to in a charter reform that is going to stick with the city until there's another measure, that we just say, pursuant to the charter, that the power to set the type of election that should occur shall be vested in the city council by ordinance. That way, the city council can change it, and we can adopt ranked choice voting now. And then if we see that there's 10% disenfranchisement or 9%, and then star voting gets certified, we can move to star voting.
So you're talking about amending your motion, Zane, or what?
Yeah, so that our discussion I'm amending my motion to include that in our discussion in whenever it occurs in October, we'll include that as a third option on the agenda.
Okay, does that make sense, Eleanor?
Yeah, if I'm hearing him right, what he's saying is we change the charter so that this is not a charter decision in the future, and that a council has jurisdiction to make a change, whether it goes back to a 50% plus one or still continues forward with like an instant runoff scenario, right, to avoid that. Yeah. Is that how I'm hearing it?
Yes.
Yeah, as long as the charter change does not mean it's just a simple plurality of votes.
No. It has to be 50% plus one in either situation. Yeah, right. That's the whole point. The whole point is to have a majority vote.
Right.
Just want to make sure.
And I think that was some of the bit of the disagreement, say, between the RCV proponents and the STAR proponents today, was that one might not necessarily lead to a majority vote, it may just be a plurality. So if I heard them right.
What I heard is neither one of them are perfect.
No, neither one.
No. Well, nothing's perfect. So
one may be less perfect than the other. Well, so listen, let me give Sarah a chance to give a couple slides, no more than a couple, Sarah, if you want to, or just talk to whatever you've heard here since.
Councilmember Narenheim, did you second that?
I did second. I okayed that amendment.
All right.
Yeah.
Thank you, Councilmember MD, for raising that.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah. Go ahead, Sarah.
I just want to make sure that before council does make a decision on this, that you have a chance to hear out both sides and get the facts. Again.
Well, we're gonna hear all this again, Sarah, right? We're gonna hear all this again next October, apparently.
Yeah,
right.
we're not making any decision on which one.
Don't worry, I'm not going to give you every single fact right now. But if you'd like to hear just a quick bullet point list, ranked choice voting ensures a majority of remaining ballots only, but a majority of ranked choice voting elections have not found majority winners. So the last mayoral election in New York City, the candidate who won did not have a majority of votes. And there's many, many examples of that. Regarding ties, any voting method could have a tie, but the last mayoral election using ranked choice voting in Portland, Maine, actually did come to a tie and the winner was drawn out of a hat. Our current system, ties can happen, but ties are much more likely to happen in ranked choice because ranked choice voting is a series of plurality voting elections. You only count the voter's top choice. And so it's just like a series of single winner, a series of plurality elections. Star voting, on the other hand, is 10 times less likely to result in a tie than our current system because you have that 5-star ballot that's 5 times as expressive and then ×2 for the runoff.
Mm-hmm.
So in terms of what is a tried and true election method, our current plurality voting system, as we know, has been used all over the world a ton, but having been used is not a measure of success. So our current system is plagued by spoilers, by vote splitting, and ranked choice voting, again, because it doesn't count all the rankings on the ballot, can and often does lead to vote splitting, lesser evil voting, and strategic voting as well. So strategic voting, like you said, Counselor, it's impossible to solve strategic voting 100% of the time. Anyone who tells you that is selling snake oil. But star voting does ensure that it's safe to vote your conscience. It incentivizes showing your preference order to ensure that you will have a say in that runoff between your two finalists. And I'm going to plow through this list really fast.
Hurry up.
In star voting, it is safe to vote for your favorite, and you should vote for your favorite. But in ranked choice voting, it is not necessarily safe to vote for your favorite. This is a voting criteria called favorite betrayal criterion. And the reason for that is because if your favorite's quite strong in ranked choice, they may well make it through a number of rounds of tabulation. And then by the time your vote would transfer to your next choice, your second choice or third choice candidate is gone already. So,
well, let me interrupt you, Sarah, because we're going to go through all this again in October, and we're not going to remember all this. It's really kind of getting too into the weeds. But I mean, I think, it's be great to see you in October, and we're going to hear all this, and then we may be making a choice at that time or not. It depends on our time frame. But yeah, if all that goes on the ballot is the council's decision to do some sort of ranked choice, then that may not even be, that probably won't be made in October, right? From what we were just talking about. So I don't want to spend a bunch of time, and we're not going to remember all this. So let me take public comment and then hear what else, any questions the council has. I mean, we get it. We see the differences for the most part, and we'll be drilling down on this again. So are there any public comments?
If I could just end my...
Sure, go ahead. Go ahead, Sarah, end your thought.
So the reason that I'm going through this is because you guys deserve to make a well-informed decision. And if we don't have time to cover this at this meeting, I worry that we won't have time to cover it in October either, This is an in-depth field like climate change that has a ton of science and hard facts. So I would encourage the committee or encourage council to convene a committee to look at this in more depth and with more time in the meantime.
Okay, well, that's a good suggestion. I appreciate that. Let me go to the public. Are there any public comments?
So I have none on Zoom, but I have two e-comments. Go ahead, Vicki.
First comment is submitted by Peter Aziz. If we are choosing to amend the charter or ordinance in favor of a new voting implementation, we should also consider adding an amendment to increase the number of years an individual should be allowed to live in the city for more than 5 years before running for council. We need a real representation of residents who have lived in our community longer than 3 months to a year. The second comment is submitted by Grace Peng. Ranked choice and preference and approval voting have been in wide use in the past. The Roman Senate thumbs up, thumbs down is approval voting. There are many voting methods and they all have strengths and weaknesses. However, experts agree that plurality, aka first past the post, is the worst system. I recommend the excellent voting methods educational website by the League of Women Voters of Boulder County, and provides a link. And that concludes the public comment.
Yeah. Fun little factoid we didn't mention. You get fined in Australia if you don't vote. They fine you anywhere, depending on which state you're in, $20 to $120. And in one state, Victoria, I think they take your driver's license away if you don't vote.
In Mexico, if you don't vote, you can't get a loan for a house.
Wow.
You have to show your voting card.
Yeah. So, I know people got tickets in the mail for not voting. They have a high turnout. Okay. Councilmember Obaji.
Quick comment. Ms. Wolf, the best thing that you can do if you want us to take Star Voting seriously is to get Star Voting to get certified. That's what they need to do. We're not going to be the experimental city. I don't think anybody wants to put Redondo in that position. So that's it. Thank you.
Okay, with that, I'll take a vote. Councilmember Narenheim.
As soon as we're done voting, I have one last thing to say.
Okay, Councilmember Lowenstein.
Hi.
We didn't hear you.
Councilmember Horvath. Was somebody on mute? What's going on?
What happened?
I keep muting myself because there's so much outside noise.
Okay, so the people in the audience, just so you guys know, the reason why that's so funny is during closed session, it was one of the comments he'd made is, aren't we tired of hearing you're on mute? And then every time he's been saying he's on mute and he's been on mute. So that's why it's funny.
It's Murphy's Law for tonight. Yes, thank you. So my vote is yes.
Well, those are the two milestone comments of the 21st century. Can you hear me now? And you're on mute. Okay, Councilmember Obaji.
Aye.
And Councilmember MD.
Aye.
Okay, well, I want to thank Sarah and everybody that came, although I think they all left already.
Mayor Brand, actually, that's actually what I want to get to real quick.
Exit stage left. Okay, go ahead.
Is if the two proponents here, Sarah and Steve and Diane, if you can reach out to me. My email is nils.narenheim@redondo.org. I have a community meeting and love to have you guys, one representative from each, to talk to the residents and educate them and talk to them. We'll give you a few minutes of time so we can have a conversation. And this does not affect the school district, correct? Because they're just a plurality.
Oh, it'll affect the school district. Absolutely, it'll affect the school district.
No, we don't have that on there to affect the school district. It's just
really?
I don't think so. They're at 50%. They're top three.
Yeah, they don't have a runoff.
Oh, yeah, that's right. That's right.
We'll get her. Okay.
Never mind.
Yeah.
Sorry. Okay.
All right. Thank you.
All right. With that, we will move on to our next item. Give me a second here. Discussion possible action regarding council participation in future public meetings. But I guess really first city manager items. Mike, do you want to cover city manager items first?
Yeah, nothing tonight, Mayor. We've got more items to go on the agenda, so we can keep moving.
Okay. Next is mayor and council item discussion possible action regarding council participation in future public meetings via teleconference pursuant to the Brown Act. You were going to cover this for us, Mike?
Yeah, I'll go ahead and cover this. This is referral. Councilmember Lowenstein has asked for this a couple of times. We're happy to be back. And just a reminder, this is actually the third conversation we had on this subject. I think we first discussed it back in July, and you had a more formal review of the matter in September. And I'll go ahead and acknowledge the clerk's office, Eleanor and Vicky, have prepared an update based on your last discussion to rules, the meeting rules, to at least consider tonight as a placeholder. We're not seeking approval of the updated rules this evening. This is really just a continuation of your conversation for you to weigh in on a couple of key decisions. One, what ultimately is going to be your prioritization for those who want to participate in council meetings via teleconference. And I should preface that with the notion that this is not something we want to implement until after we're done with the emergency period. Right now, the emergency order gives us really mass flexibility in how we conduct our public meetings. We've been taking great advantage of that through our Zoom format. It's worked well for us. In fact, many of our neighbors have had to toggle back to Zoom, and they were running some hybrid model during, at least for the last couple of months, and now are concerned about the surging and have moved back to a more traditional Zoom environment. So we've been pretty steady in that. We think it's served our community well, and we would not recommend implementing the formal teleconferencing opportunity until we're at the tail end of the pandemic and ready to come back to the city council chambers as a matter of our regular course and scope of business. So tonight is really a chance to talk about the rules, continue this process. I think the council has consensus in that it would like to make permanent the opportunity to meet via teleconference. I think that's clear. You really have to decide on who gets to take advantage of that, because only 2 of you on any given meeting night will be able to participate via Zoom or video conference. 3 of the council members specifically, will need to be in the council chambers when we get back to the more permanent Brown Act governed process. So if we want to give priority for medical reasons, or if we want to give priority to those who are traveling, or simply as the draft rules state, base it on a first come, first serve request, we can set the rules accordingly. We've talked to IT, Chris and I and Matt met. We clearly now have the technology in our currently upgraded council chambers to accommodate video teleconferencing for our meetings. Effectively, what would happen is that the city council chambers itself would be one of our Zoom boxes, and then the 1 or 2 council members who are working remotely would be able to Zoom in through our large video screen in a group format. So whereas a couple of years ago when this conversation came up, we didn't really have the technology to facilitate remote meetings. We would have had to do it probably on basically a telephonic basis. We would have done it through conference call or the like. This now, and I guess that is the one upside of the pandemic, it has allowed us to invest in greater technology and expand those capabilities. So we have the tech to do it. And what we would also recommend is that we simply provide 2 standby laptops that any of you could check out if you were to be traveling and would need to participate via teleconference. So we don't see it as a massive cost item. We can provide that technology. We can provide that equipment on an as needed and requested basis. You all really just need to decide who and when would get to participate in this capacity. And ultimately, if there are any concerns about how we would like the community to be able to interact with those meetings during that process. The meeting rules do note a couple of requirements, and I think they've been mentioned in prior presentations, both by Mike Webb and Eleanor. If you do participate remotely, you have to post the agenda at your location. You have to make your meeting location available to the public. And there are some advanced noticing that would be required in the agenda itself that would identify which council member would be participating remotely and how they could be contacted in advance of that meeting. So you'll see that in the edited red line that information is there. And then generally, I think tonight we would just ask that you give us further direction on this draft. And again, Eleanor and Vicky prepared it, so I don't want to speak to the specific content in the updated meeting rules. They can speak to that. But we would ask you give us further direction. And then at some point later, we would bring the rules back for formal adoption. And you could then begin to participate that way, as I said, as we emerge out of the emergency period. So staff are available if you have any questions. That concludes my remarks.
Well, it sounds like the big question is who gets it. Like, it seems like first come, first serve is the best way to go, and allows people to plan vacations if they know they're going to be gone and be able to put in for it, be able to count on being able to do that. But other than that, I think people need to understand that, if you're just doing it from home because you're sick or something, you still have to make your house available so people can come in and talk to you in person. Correct, Mike?
That's correct.
Yeah, that is correct. And it's funny now because we're Zooming, the one thing we haven't really explored, and I don't know if this would have to be clarification in the Brown Act, or perhaps this is something that continues through future state action or continuation of broader video conferencing opportunity. But, the public now does have an opportunity to participate remotely via the Zoom program today. I'm wondering if we're firing up a Zoom meeting with the council chambers participating in that meeting, if by way of that remote technology, the same member of the public that would have gone to wherever that remote location would be for one or both of the council members could simply, by way of Zoom, participate at whatever location they too are at. So, that almost provides the equal opportunity for them. And it may be that by us engaging in Zoom activities while the majority of us are in person in the chambers, we may add actually another element of transparency and community participation to all of our meetings via either e-comment or Zoom participation, in addition to those people and members of the public that would come to our podium in person. So, there's an opportunity to really almost expand public engagement.
That's already going on in other cities.
Right.
Other cities have already, I think Manhattan Beach is one of them. They already went back to physical meetings and they allow people to participate.
Yeah, they're hybrid, right?
By Zoom. So yeah, it's going on right now.
And I see us probably doing that. And if the Brown Act evolves in a way that makes that opportunity sufficient as it pertains to a member's place of conducting the meeting, and the fact that the forum is really a video venue rather than a place, that there may not be that obligation to open up a home per se to a member of the public, because there's another way for them to participate remotely.
Yeah. Okay, Councilmember MD.
Was that run by our Brown Act expert, Mike Webb's office?
No, that's why I said we need to look into that specifically. And that's something we'll clarify. And again, we don't want to implement this until we're out of this emergency period, because we want as much flexibility in how we conduct our meetings now. If we were to adopt these rules, we would then be bound. We would be bound by this specific process. We would rather us operate within the umbrella of the current emergency order for the time being.
Okay. Go ahead.
I was going to say just that I know there's laws that they're looking at some of that, the Brown Act, regarding changing those things. So we're keeping abreast of that.
If we decide first come, first serve, I would like to see us to have a certain number, a limited number, unless there's some kind of major medical to be done. So in other words, if I hog it all up and I put in, okay, for the next 17 meetings, I'm going to be gone. I am going to be whatever, not doing. It seems like that's a little unfair for people, that there needs to be like maybe a maximum for the year or something along those lines. Just something to consider for the next one. And also this code of conduct, this isn't the complete code of conduct, is it? Because it's missing some stuff from our original code of conduct. Or you just do the experts on how in the meeting?
I'll let Eleanor maybe enter.
Yeah, this is the rules of conduct. So I'm not sure what you're saying, some are missing.
All right, I will look up and get the rules of conduct, for example, the reason why I always say 10:30 is when we say that we have to decide what's on the rest of the agenda after 11. It's in the rules of conduct. That's where I got that rule from. And
Right, it's
I
there.
don't see it. I don't see it on there.
It's the last one. It says meeting adjournment.
Is it? Okay, I apologize.
It's on the last page.
Okay, then in that case, I just wanted to make sure that that the whole thing was on there. Okay, awesome. Thanks.
It's an important point, not just, first come, first serve, but how many can you reserve, in advance, in one, maybe going forward in a year or something. We didn't figure that out.
And maybe you consider putting a governor on how far out in advance you can make that request in effect.
Yeah, that might work too. Some exception if somebody's ill for some reason, if they need a bunch. Okay, Councilmember Obaji.
Oh, and I'm sorry. I'm sorry. One more thing. The last thing is that also should we consider something to discuss about the public hearing, whether or not that really should be allowed during a public hearing to have a Zoom type of meeting. So just that was the last point. Sorry, I forgot. Go on.
Okay, Councilmember Obaji.
I just want to make sure that we have some sort of medical exemption so that we can accommodate if somebody's immunocompromised and they can't be around a bunch of people that on an ongoing basis that they have they're not subject to the limitations as far as numerosity of requests.
Yeah, you could have like council approval, kind of like they do leave of absence. The council can just approve, as part of a medically,
Got it.
Flexibility.
Okay, got it. All right, cool. That's it.
Okay, Councilmember Lowenstein.
Yeah, I would agree. I think, Laura, that's fine in terms of limiting it. I don't plan on abusing it whatsoever. And I think it's great that not only are we allowing people that have to travel for business to be able to conduct business on the council, but also the fact that our constituents sometimes are traveling themselves for business and they want to contribute to a meeting, but they can't because they're out of town. So I think it would be great if we could expand this like we talked about, where we allow people to participate via Zoom, or they may be physically challenged or handicapped. They may be sick, but they still want to participate. That's one of the nice things that we've discovered with the pandemic. One of the few nice things is that I think even though we may not have as many people sometimes for meetings, it's become a lot more universal. People are getting used to it. They can contribute. And, in terms of the public hearing part of it, I guess that's something we can discuss. I'm not sure. I don't know how the Brown Act looks at that, but I don't know how that would differ if you couldn't participate via teleconference or Zoom for a public hearing. Unless, I guess I don't see any issue with it. Laura and I, we've done this before on the school board. It worked fine. Business work was conducted just fine. I know there's concerns, but just like Zoom, everything gets worked out. We adjust to how we do business. And quite honestly, a lot of us, I don't think I've missed more than 1 or 2 meetings in 5 years here. So I still don't want to take advantage of this unless I have to, and unless I have to plan and I have to travel for work. So I look forward to this. Thank you, Mike, for bringing this back. I look forward to us hopefully moving towards this and allowing us to continue to participate as council members or the mayor. And by the way, the mayor is not part of that quorum, right? So he can conduct business from home or traveling or whatever if he has to, correct?
Yeah,
so it's only the council that's part of the quorum.
Yeah, the 3 members that must be present are members of the council. So the mayor and 2 others could theoretically participate remotely.
Yeah, we have to have a quorum in the council chambers.
So the quorum pertains to the council and not the mayor.
Correct.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, what we haven't played with, and we'll have to provide some flexibility in trying to navigate, the in-person Zoom concept, right? We haven't even got back to the council chambers yet to really experience the chambers as they've been upgraded. But we would want to look, I think, at the logistics of running a meeting remotely via Zoom while everyone's present. We'll need to see how that works. I can't imagine, though, on its face that couldn't be managed and facilitated. So,
It'll work out, I'm sure.
yeah.
And in terms of the whole thing about allowing people into your home, to me, it's a little bit of a safety issue, I think, as well, too. You don't know who's coming to your home. I think most of our constituents are pretty cool, but especially if you're sick and you're inviting people into your home, it's a little bit bizarre to me, I think. But especially when
it's required by the Brown Act, and so if you're sick and you want people coming to your home, then you're going to be absent.
Yeah, so that's probably the case. It's probably how we should handle it.
Yeah.
I just don't, there's, if somebody really wants to participate and you're in Redondo Beach, they can come to the council chambers just as much as they can come to your home. So I wouldn't recommend that anybody do this from home unless it's absolutely necessary. And maybe if they're immunocompromised, I guess maybe that could be an issue, but I don't know. Anyway.
And as Eleanor noted, maybe we'll get an assist from the legislature in this. I mean, there likely will be some new Brown Act associated with, video meetings, I would think.
Yeah, I mean, it's a different thing if they're coming to a conference room in a hotel, a public place versus a private residence. I think there's a big difference. So anyway, all right. Well, that's just my take on it. But I'm really glad we're broaching this. I think it's about time, and I'm glad we're all hopefully on board with this, because I think it would be a good step in the right direction for us to increase participation. So thank you.
I mean, we kind of had this discussion before. I'm having deja vu all over again. Somebody needs to make a motion. Councilmember Nierenheim.
So I was going to make a motion. If we're going to go down this path as well, I would also probably update the e-comment situation, because there's no reason to read every single e-comment when we're making life as easy as people for do Zoom in person and then show up in person. We should, probably, if we do the e-comments, just handle them the same way we handle email, which is they just go into the folder. And the point of comment is for the people to speak to the council, the decision makers, not for the comment to be used as a political speech to, get your point across to the public. That's what the non-agenda items is for. So, we get a lot of emails, and the way we used to handle emails or e-comment was just simply getting them into the record and us just reading them. So I would say we need to update that. And when it comes to council members being sick, I mean, if somebody wants to show up at a council member's house who's sick, well, think about that. So they've got the flu or COVID or whatever, cold or whatever it may be, something contagious. Think twice about that. The last thing is, I don't think we need to necessarily go to depths of one council member not being available, 10 times a year. I think we should be able to handle that as it comes up and say maybe they could, the council itself can deal with that. So I would just make a motion to approve. Mike, Eleanor, all we need is a motion to approve the changes, correct?
I would say if you're comfortable with the changes, that direction to bring it back at the appropriate time for adoption, because we don't want to adopt it now and then inadvertently bind ourselves by this when we have broader flexibility under the emergency order.
But my question is, the changes that we need are in here. So we don't need to have any further changes. It doesn't sound like we're going to be making any other changes.
Yeah. The only thing I've heard is, do you want to put some sort of restriction on
right?
You just mentioned it, the cap to the number of times to do it, and then is there a timing requirement as to when you would make the request for a first come first serve?
Oh, we had a timing requirement. So I would just say regarding the timing requirement to have it in by Wednesday. Just make it Wednesday by 5 p.m. So I'll make a motion to approve the changes to the rules of conduct for meetings to allow for teleconferencing and have the request come in by Wednesday at 5 p.m.
Well, I think we actually have in the rules, as I read them, a 10-day prerequisite, because there's some additional noticing that goes into the agenda packet itself.
Oh, right.
When somebody, so if you're talking about when you could make the request we want to back it up from there at a minimum.
Yeah, and I guess my other question too is what is your actual maximum? What do you want to have as your actual maximum?
Missed meetings?
No. Actually, be as a Zoom participant and not be at the council chambers. I mean,
So the amount of time?
Councilman Empty was bringing up about.
For example, it could be
max.
something like 12, so in
Right.
other words,
So what is that?
so that, I mean, it doesn't have to be really big, or 12, it could be at 12, there's a discussion or an approval by council or something along those lines. Right now, we have a rule that if you're outside of the city more than 30 days, you could be kicked off council. So, I mean, I think, having, anytime it gets past 12, there's some kind of a vote or something. I don't know. It doesn't even have to be that strict. I just think there should be something in there that kind of gives us some kind of flexibility and leeway. I don't know what that is offhand. You're trying to think of all possibilities.
Was that the max you're asking for? The maximum amount of period of time? Like I could say, I want to do telephonic appearance 3 months from now.
No, I was talking about just how many times you can do it offline.
Without some kind of control, anybody could just say, okay, I need every single council meeting.
Right.
I'm not saying that's going to happen, but you don't make rules, just for the usual situation. You make rules to prevent these outrageous things from happening. And it's not that big of a deal. I mean, you can just limit it to 6. And then you can relax the limitation. You could say subject to council approval, you're limited you're limited to 6 unless you have council approval to have more, something like that.
There you go. 6 is even more restrictive than I was thinking. But yeah,
whatever.
Exactly.
Exactly.
Just 6 it doesn't matter the number, and you put it up to council approval after that. That's fine. It's just to make sure.
I guarantee you at some point in the future, somebody will come down and go, okay, I'm taking them all. And there'll be no way to stop it.
They're going to be ostracized. Mike, were you talking about 10
doesn't matter. They don't care. Some people don't care.
Yeah, and I should clarify. I think it wasn't 10 days. It was 10 a.m. that I misspoke on. So it's 10 a.m. Thursday is how it's written now, so we can get the proper notifications of the agenda. So if we're going to say, the first eligible opportunity to request the opportunity to participate remotely would be 30 days before the meeting or 3 months before the meeting, or whatever you think's a reasonable request window. But if you set a 6 times per year cap, you probably already curbed this issue. So maybe you need prerequisite time frame in that sense.
So, but if someone gets sick on, say, Monday with the cold or flu or COVID or whatever it may be, COVID 5.0, 10.0, then they wouldn't be able to utilize this.
No.
You're going to miss the meeting.
You're going to miss the meeting. Yeah, because you've been able to build it into the agenda for posting.
So I would say, so this is a vacation. Essentially what this is a vacation or a significant injury or health issue way to still participate. So
or a business conflict, right?
Business, vacation, significant health issue. So in my world, that would be 2 months of time. 2 months would be 6 meetings, maybe 9 meetings, maybe 3 months, a quarter. You can't participate for a quarter in person, then maybe it's up to council direction.
Yeah, you could say something without council approval. It is limited to pick a number.
Right. So I would put in there then, it sounds like the majority of council members would want to put that in there. A maximum of 9 meetings and then council approval after the 9 meetings.
Okay.
Per year.
In 1 year.
Okay, so then the other question I have you mentioned regarding e-comments, just so you know, what we do right now is if someone speaks, then we actually look for their e-comment and not read it. That's what we're doing right now. But so you want us to bring something, just whether you want to read or not read the e-comments?
Yeah, I don't know how the rest of the council feels about that in the future. We can take it up later if we need to,
okay.
But I don't necessarily feel that we want to hold this up if we have to. So and bring this, and part of that motion that I have bring this back at the appropriate time.
Okay. Sounds good.
All right. And there's a second to that?
Second.
Sure. Motion and a second. And this will come back and you'll still be able to make amendments to it. So this is final. Okay, do a roll call vote, Councilor.
We have done it before. We have some public comments. So go ahead, Vicki.
Okay, Peter Aziz, thank you. Peter Aziz submits, I travel often to DC and Sacramento. I think it would be helpful to have more access to participate. Leslie Campeggi submits, if in the future public participation is also allowed at a city council meeting from remote locations or via Zoom, who gets first preference to speak? The people attending in person, those who register via Zoom, alternating between the two. Remember, the mayor and council can speak as often as they like on an agenda item and for longer periods of time. However, public participation non-agenda items has been limited to 30 minutes. Since remote council meetings have been taking place, public participants on Zoom have been given first preference. To expand to public attendance remotely likely has to have a separate set of rules. Definitely something to think about from several vantage points. If public participation does become allowed remotely, perhaps e-comments should no longer be read at city council meetings. That concludes comments.
Okay. I'll do a roll call vote. Councilmember. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, so let me just, I'll go with the first, the e-comments. I agree that once we're kind of back to something a little bit more normalized, that I agree with Nils, the e-comments could go in with emails, I think. But that's kind of under the assumption that he's making, right? That Zoom is still a possibility, so people can participate virtually or in person. But he brought up a point that I had raised my hand for, which is like an emergency situation, right? Where somebody has every intention to be at a meeting, but then can't be there. And I think it would be silly of us to not consider that, or to not at least petition if Sacramento is making, potential changes to the Brown Act, to consider that, because if you have every intention of being at a meeting, but you can't, but yet we're allowing the public to participate via Zoom, it doesn't make sense that we would disallow a member from being able to participate in an emergent situation from a virtual place. And so whenever this comes back, I just think it's something we should consider. Clearly you're putting in rules that will prevent somebody from abusing the system, but this isn't abusing the system. If Todd was traveling back from Spain, but he got held over in New York for some reason, right? Why wouldn't he, I don't know, I'm just using him because he travels internationally more than most of us. So, but, and he wanted to participate, he actually could, but according to the rules right now, if he hasn't noticed it in 72 hours, he can't. And that doesn't make sense. So just food for thought. I think we should consider that.
That's the Brown Act.
Well, that's why I'm saying it's something we should talk about further, because this whole pandemic has created a whole new world that nobody thought existed before, right? Mm-hmm. And now it's here. And so it changes the game.
Right. Some of us have elderly parents, and you might have to travel to see them or whatever, it's the unknown. So I agree with you. It's
the unknown. And I think, if you can participate, you clearly want to. And that was something that you had said many times, Todd, like, hey, I'm totally game to participate when I'm traveling. So just food for thought.
And if I could add one more item to Councilman Nierenheim's comments on the e-comment notion, we may want to, if you're willing to give us this flexibility, we may want to come back with some additional adjustments to the public participation section of these rules to more comprehensively address future Zoom participation at later meetings. We may want to give some description of, video opportunities for the public, registering as an attendee. Some of the stuff we have on our agenda now under our emergency format, we probably ought to include in this section of the rules going forward if Zoom is indeed the medium we use.
Okay.
And a quick question.
Are there any more comments, Councilmember Nierenheim?
Real quick. I mean, Eller, why don't we allow participants to do their video publicly?
Well, so right now what happens is because we're doing webinar, they're under attendees. So if I have a huge amount of people, I have to actually put them as a panelist, and then I have to put them back. So it's just a little bit more time consuming, and it slows down your process. I mean, I have to move them, and then I have to click on them to talk.
Okay.
So that was the only reason. I didn't realize that, that was how it worked.
Yeah, because other cities do allow the video to be on. So, okay.
I just have it under webinar, which makes it a little bit more controlled.
Okay, there's a motion on the floor and a second. I'll do a roll call vote. Councilmember Narenheim.
Aye.
Councilmember Lowenstein.
Aye.
Councilmember Horvath.
Aye.
Councilmember Obaji.
Aye.
And Councilmember MD.
Aye.
Okay, so this will come back when the pandemic's over.
Hopefully really soon.
Yeah. Next month.
Yeah.
Okay. Discussion and possible action regarding the appointment of an alternate member to the Clean Power Alliance Board of Directors. Somebody want to make a motion, volunteer?
I'll make a motion to told Councilman Lowenstein.
To do what?
I'll make a motion to voluntold Councilmember Lowenstein for the position of
I'm surprised it's not you, Nils. I'm really surprised. I gladly accept that appointment. I'm a big proponent of CPA, so yeah.
So
Thank
did
you.
you second your nomination?
I seconded if I'm allowed to, I'll second my nominations.
You're allowed.
It's bad form to back in the old days.
I'll second that nomination.
I vote for myself, so I might as well nominate myself.
Okay. Is there any public comment? Okay. I'll do a vote. Councilmember Narenheim.
Aye.
Councilmember Lowenstein.
Aye.
Councilmember Obaji.
Aye.
I'm sorry, Councilmember Horvath.
Aye.
And Councilmember MD.
Aye.
Thank you.
There you go. Have fun. Mayor and council referrals to staff. Councilmember Narenheim.
I have nothing to refer. Thank you.
Councilmember Lowenstein.
Thank you.
Councilmember Horvath.
Yeah, just one thing, and I've already been talking with Ted and Mike offline, but I don't know how many of you have gotten questions and concerns from people about the 1383 letter that came from Athens. And so I know I'm going to talk with Ted more later, but we may want to just put something on the website, depending on what you guys decide to do. So I'm just kind of throwing that out there that we may want to just put something up on our city homepage.
Yeah, well, everybody got a letter, and the meaning I got out of it, maybe I'm wrong, we already have a green waste can. So is there anything more that Redondo Beach has to do in that regard?
No, we're pretty well received, ready for this new mandate. But what we can do to Councilman Horvath's point is maybe update the messaging on the page to help demystify what's happening. I know there was some confusion over a survey that has gone out. So
I think residential people just got confused, and the letter didn't really clarify, that they were already participating.
Right. Because there are changes though to multifamily structures. I mean, the mandate now applies to commercial businesses and multifamily units. Some of our multifamily units were participating in the green waste program prior to the mandate. Now all have to. So there are residents that are caught up in this just through their association and property complexes. I don't know, Ted, if you want to.
Yeah, there was the one part that really added to the confusion is that Athens was supposed to sort this and only send it to the residential properties that have carts that did not have a green waste bin. But I think there are several that went out to those that actually have them. And you're right, that caused a lot of confusion because you would look at yourself, at your system and go, how am I in non-compliance? What do I need to do? I think I have everything that I need to do. And we will be having some conversations. And yeah, that's a good point. We'll update that on our website. And I may even be talking to Athens to have them send an updated letter that further clarifies that as well.
Yeah, our elderly facilities, some of them have gone into a flurry because they're panicked about it and the cost of the trash bags and so on and so forth. So I did direct one of them, Breakwater Village, to Amanda at Athens. And I think she got them in touch with folks, and I haven't heard back from them. So I think they've resolved it.
Yeah, there will be probably more of that. Yes, I think that is the one caveat to the implementation here. That's a new group of people that haven't experienced this before.
Okay.
You don't have to use bags. You don't have to have the extra cost of bags. You don't have to use them.
Right. I mean, they didn't even have the green bins, right? And they don't have space for it. So they're like, where are we going to put it? How are we barely get people to recycle as is. How are we going to get them to do the, biocompost, et cetera?
Yeah, some of the multifamily complexes don't have physical space for green waste bins. So they're going to an individualized product, which they'll have to participate in.
Yeah.
Whether or not they choose to throw anything away that way or not. It's a different matter.
On that enforcement team.
Right.
Okay, Councilmember Obaji, you have anything for?
I just have BRR request. For stuff like the MLK event, it would be wonderful if that was live broadcast, especially because it's indoors, if it was live broadcast to the city. So I'd like a BRR for, broadcast equipment that can stream live to, our public channel or our YouTube channel, and the cost essentially of somebody who's going to man or human that process. Whether it's
so for events, both indoor, all forms of events, or just
all forms of events, all forms of city events. Whether even if it's outdoor, like the candlelighting ceremony, I guess, or what is it, the candlelight vigil for. That would be great if we could live stream that, even for folks who just didn't make it out for one reason or another because their kids go to bed early or something like that.
Yeah. So to your point, we would provide a BRR that would talk about the staffing required to film, video, and then
the equipment, right? To the extent that your equipment is necessary.
Right. All right. We can bring that back to you mid-year.
Cool. Thanks.
Okay. Great. Councilmember MD.
Nothing. Thanks.
Okay. Yeah. I just thank staff again for fixing the railing over at Veterans Park. Made a big difference. People feel safe down there now. But with that, it's about 9:30, and I guess that's a wrap. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Until move to adjourn in the memory of Lance Widman, founder and executive director of the South Bay Center for Dispute Resolution.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he served the city of Redondo Beach for many, many years. Served us well.
Second.
Is there a second?
Second that.
Second.
Okay, any objections? Okay, we are adjourned in memory of Lance Widman.
Bye.
Perfect.